Chapter 1582. The ancestral worshipping ceremony was held once every 100 years. It was one of the most important events for the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. How could he dare to delay the ancestral worshipping ceremony because of him? Don't worry, clan leader. I've already made the necessary preparations. I won't delay the ceremony. Elder Igong's voice trembled as he spoke. Although he held a high position in the clan and held great power, there were some things that even he did not dare to cross. Yi Zhao glanced at him. You also know that there is no room for mistakes during the ancestral worshipping ceremony. Everything has to be done with extreme caution. You have been staying at Phoenix Mountain for the past few days, right? It is inevitable that you will be distracted. Delaying the time is better than making any mistakes when the time comes. Many gazes were directed at them. Elder Igong's face turned green and white. He was extremely embarrassed. Yi Zhao's words were not without reason, but in front of so many people, he really did not give him any face at all. Furthermore, he had been the great elder for so many years. It was not the first time he had to prepare for the ancestral worshipping ceremony. Nothing had ever happened before. Why would he suddenly die just because he stayed in Phoenix Valley for 2 more days? A thought flashed through his mind as he glanced at Yi Zhao. Suddenly, he became suspicious. Why did it feel like the clan leader wanted to delay the ancestral worshipping ceremony? Elder Igong retracted his gaze, calmed himself down, and said word by word, "That's right. Don't worry, clan leader. I will personally supervise in the coming days to ensure that nothing goes wrong. If anything happens, I am willing to bear all the responsibility." This was a bit like a military order. Yi Zhao raised his eyebrows slightly. Since you have said so, I will believe you this time. Elder Igong was stunned. Why, did he not say that he was delaying and agreed directly? He quickly looked up. Unfortunately, he could not see anything from Yi Zhao's face. He could only suppress his suspicions. All right. Go and prepare. Yi Zhao waved his hand. Elder Igong bowed his head and replied. Yes. Yintian Tower. In the ethereal hall, it was dead silent. Rong Xiu's question made Elder Yu Jingzuan panic. In just a short while, his back was drenched in sweat. His clothes were stuck to his body, and it was sticky and cold. It was extremely uncomfortable. It's because, Elder Yu Jing hesitated, but he could not find a reason. He felt that Rong Xiu's gaze was as sharp and cold as an ice blade when it landed on him. Right at this moment, a low and deep voice suddenly sounded. When something happened to the patriarch, the first person to go in was Yu Jing. Wasn't it normal for the patriarch to have his aura on him? The elder Tong Chuan. Hearing this, Elder Yu Jing's train of thought was suddenly broadened. He sat bolt upright. Yes. Yes. At that time, I had some matters to discuss with the patriarch, but after knocking on the door for a long time, there was no response. I was worried, so I barged into the clan leader's room. When I entered, I saw that the clan leader was unconscious, so I took his pulse and injected a surge of origin energy into him. That's all. He averted his eyes. It slipped my mind that there was such a matter. No one knew whether he had really forgotten about it or not. It was up to Rong Xiu whether he believed it or not. Is that so? Sitting at the head of the table, he tapped his hand lightly on the armrest. His eyes were deep and unfathomable, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. Elder Tong Chuan raised his eyebrows. Elder Yu Jing has always been close to the clan leader. When he saw that something happened to the clan leader, he couldn't help but worry about him. Actually, I do have some thoughts about why the clan leader suddenly fell unconscious. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Elder Tong Chuan's face suddenly revealed a hint of worry, and he sighed deeply. Actually, this old man thought that the clan leader had suffered a blow in Fang province and was in a bad mood. That was why he locked himself in the house and refused to see anyone after returning. Since your highness has already checked the clan leader's condition, you should know that there are no injuries inside or outside his body. Perhaps, it has something to do with his mood. There was silence. The incident in Fong province that day had already spread like wildfire, and almost the entire Divine Ruins world knew about it. The clan leader of Yuntian Tower, Bailey June, had brought Jiang Ji-won with him since she was a child, taking care of her carefully and doting on her. Who would have thought that in the end, she wasn't his biological granddaughter? This matter had already become a joke to everyone. No one would be able to accept it, let alone Bailey June, who had always cared about his face. Elder Tong Chuan raised his eyes and looked at Rong Xiu. Your Highness, don't wash your dirty linen in public. You were too impulsive that day. After the incident in Fong province, he had almost lost all his face. It would be difficult for him to appear in front of the people of the Divine Ruins world in the future. If he could come back and talk about it in private, the clan leader might not be like this. Rong Xiu smiled with a lazy expression. Elder Tong Chuan, do you mean, everything is Ai's fault? That's not what this old man meant. Elder Tong Chuan said. This old man just feels that there should be a better way to deal with the incident that day. Clan leader knew that Lingxiao College was in a lot of trouble, but he still brought Jiang Ji-won there. Moreover, after Jiang Ji-won's many crimes were exposed, he was still very biased towards her. I didn't want to get involved in all these things at that time, but the clan leader only cared about Jiang Ji-won, so I couldn't persuade him no matter what. In the end, things developed to that point, and I didn't want to see it. Rong Xiu interrupted him and looked at him with a smile. However, there was coldness at the corner of his eyes. Could it be that Elder Tong Chuan thinks that I want to lose face in front of all the experts of the Divine Ruins world? Elder Tong Chuan choked. Of course, he couldn't admit it. But, if it wasn't premeditated, why would Rong Xiu arrange for someone to replace Jiang Hetian and take the Jiang family under his command? He had clearly planned it all out. Elder Tong Chuan even felt that Rong Xiu had known about the matter between Bailey June and Jiang Ji-won long ago. As for losing face, at most, Rong Xiu would lose face, but the one who really lost face was still Bailey June. Rong Xiu looked around. Did you all come with the same idea this time? His voice was very soft and faint, but it weighed heavily on everyone's heart like a heavy stone. Elder Tong Chuan hurriedly explained. Your Highness, you misunderstand. This old man just felt that the incident might have caused too much of a blow to the clan leader, so. Of course, there might be other possibilities. Of course there are other possibilities. Rong Xiu said lightly. The clan leader has just broken through and his strength has increased greatly. Even if he is depressed, he shouldn't be like this. Instead of investigating, you are all here waiting to question I. His thin scarlet lips curled up slightly. You guys are getting bolder and bolder. Love Network has a better reading experience. Chapter 1583. Looks like this Shengguan Yu is not only brave, but also capable. Fenghuang Valley. Elder Yu looked at the ball of bright light in the distance and could not help but click his tongue. It had been a total of 13 days since she triggered the heavenly lightning. Everything was the same as before, and there was no sign of it stopping. Every day, every night, every moment, the scene in Fenghuang Valley was the same. He was getting tired of looking at it. At first, he was quite interested in counting how many heavenly lightning bolts had gathered. But he gave up soon after. Because he realized that it was impossible to count. Those Tianlei seemed to be free as they struck down one after another. Lightning flashed, and it was blinding. How could he count them? It has been so long, why is there still no sign of it? Elder Yu knew that Shengguan Yu had summoned so many Tianlei not to refine the divine artifact, but to help Dumpling break through. Unfortunately, until now, there were still no signs of it happening. But there was not much time left. Elder Yu squinted his eyes and suddenly turned around to look at the Phoenix Shrine in the distance. The ancestral worship ceremony was getting closer and closer, and the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was getting busy. He did not know if he could make it in time. Chu Luiyue was also at a loss. She sat cross-legged on the star stone and raised her head slightly. She looked at Dumpling, who was still busy in mid-air, with mixed feelings. Logically speaking, it should be over, it had been so long, but Dumpling did not show any signs of breaking through to the meridian opening realm. Instead, it seemed to be getting hungrier as it ate. The only change was that there were many flashing silver lightning bolts on its body, which occasionally swam through its feathers. The aura on its body was still rising at first, but since 3 days ago, it had stagnated. Seeing that Tuanzi had once again devoured all the lightning bolts that landed, Chu Luiyue turned around and glanced at the bangle that was suspended in midair. With Dumpling around, it would be quite difficult to complete the refinement process. Chu Luiyue rubbed his forehead. Dumpling had devoured quite a bit of Tianlei's power in the eye of the 10,000 wine spring. But at that time, in order to stimulate the bloodline in its body, it broke through from the red-tailed red phoenix to the ancient divine beast crimson gold heavenly phoenix. It was understandable. But what was going on now? Its small body was almost like a bottomless pit. None of the Tianlei that had fallen had returned. After thinking for a long time, Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but ask, "Dumpling, when do you plan to break through?" Dumpling was stunned. She lowered her head and looked at her. Just as she was about to say something, there was a loud explosion in the sky. A few more Tianlei bolts flew down again. Dumpling's eyes lit up. She didn't have time to say anything to Chu Luiyue and hurriedly went to greet him. Crackle. Crunch. Looking at Dumpling devouring the Tianlei with great proficiency, the corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched fiercely. Then, she accepted her fate and swallowed the rest of her words. Fine. There were some things that really didn't need to be asked anymore. Beside the vast and boundless sea, Shangguan Jing stood with his hands behind his back and looked ahead with a solemn expression. So much time had passed, but still hadn't returned. He didn't know what the situation inside was like. The more he waited, the more uneasy he felt. At this moment, a reddish gold light suddenly rushed out from under the sea surface. It went straight to the sky. Bang! That ball of hot flame drew an extremely brilliant arc in the sky, and then suddenly exploded. Countless sparks bloomed. It was noon. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. But the sparks were still bright. In the end, it formed a huge pattern of a crimson gold heavenly phoenix spreading its wings in the sky. Shangguan Jing's heart tightened. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and a trace of shock flashed past his eyes. Could it be that the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's ancestral worship ceremony had begun? He had never been to the Divine Phoenix Mountain. Even when he was unhindered in the Divine Ruins world 1,000 years ago, he had never come into contact with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. In the eyes of the world, the two great ancient divine beasts were extremely mysterious. However, there were many legends about their ancestral worship ceremony. It was rumored that their ancestral worship ceremony was only held once every 100 years. It was very grand and had a profound meaning. Shangguan Jing looked over again. In the sky, the pattern of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix formed by the blooming flames didn't dissipate. Instead, it seemed to be fixed. Every single spark was burning passionately and emitting a dazzling light. It was really bright and dazzling. Shangguan Jing couldn't help but feel even more uneasy. How important was the ancestral worship ceremony? The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had always hated the human race. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to let continue to stay there. Why hadn't she come out yet? Right at this moment, a melodious and loud cry came from afar. In an instant, it almost spread throughout the entire sea. Shangguan Jing's heart trembled, and he almost couldn't stand still. Immediately after, he saw a layer of ice rapidly spreading above the sea in front of him. Transparent ice covered the sea surface. At a glance, the crimson gold light could be faintly seen. It was exactly the same as the ice bridge that appeared that day. However, this time, the layer of ice had extended from the narrow ice bridge to the entire surface of the sea. In just a short while, more than half of the sea in front of Shangguan Jing was already frozen. At a glance, it was cold and clear. However, below it, there were crimson gold flames that burned silently. Solemn and sacred, silent and silent. In the square in front of the Phoenix Shrine, the members of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan were divided into two sides. Each of them was anxiously and expectantly waiting for the ancestral worship ceremony to begin. At this moment, the clan leader and the 5 elders were still in the Phoenix Shrine and hadn't come out. Everyone's mood wasn't as tense as before. They were discussing something in low voices. After waiting for so long, it's finally here. Hee, this is my first time participating in the ancestral worship ceremony. Me too. There's going to be a talent test during the ceremony. I don't know if I can get a good result. Actually, I'm not worried about the talent test. After all, everyone more or less knows their own standards. It's just that, after the test, there's still a competition. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to win beautifully. The one with the most confidence should be Ran, right? I heard that this time, he's aiming for the position of young master. Hasn't he always considered himself as the #1 person in the younger generation? But since he has this ability, it's not up to us to say anything. Why isn't he here yet? Hearing this, many people looked around. Indeed, they didn't see Ran's figure. Strange. He's always the most active on such occasions. Why is he so late today? Let's not talk about him. It's almost time. The clan leader and the rest haven't come out yet. Inside the Phoenix Shrine, Zhao and the 5 elders stood. Elder Gong raised his eyes. Clan leader, it's time. We should go out. Digression, my hands are frozen, so I'm writing very slowly. My friends who have won a prize should quickly join the group and look for February to get the rewards. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1584. Zhao nodded and took the lead to walk outside. The black gilded door opened automatically. Bright sunlight shone in. Zhao lifted his chin slightly and looked outside. From here to the plaza, one needed to walk down 9 flights of stairs. Thus, standing here, one could easily overlook the entire plaza. When the door opened and a few figures appeared, the originally lively plaza instantly quieted down. All eyes were focused on them. Then, everyone bowed in unison. Welcome, clan leader. Many figures on both sides bowed in unison. Although there were not many people, those who were able to come here were the most outstanding of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Just by standing there, he was able to produce an imperceptibly strong pressure. Zhao calmly raised his eyes and looked in the direction of Fenghuang Valley. Dark clouds gathered, and Tianlei rumbled. Clearly, the commotion over there had not stopped. No one knew if it would end in a short period of time. Zhao quickly retracted his gaze and waved his hand. A majestic aura quickly spread out. Rise. Only then did everyone stand up. Zhao looked around. When he saw the group of youngsters standing together, he paused for a moment. Sensing that the patriarch was looking at them, the young children all unconsciously became nervous. Among them, many were participating in the ancestral worship ceremony for the first time. It was also their first time coming to the plaza in front of the shrine of the Phoenix. It was normal for them to be nervous. Fortunately, Zhao quickly retracted his gaze, which lessened the invisible pressure on them. Zhao's deep and distant voice spread out mightily and clearly landed in everyone's ears. Today's ancestral worship ceremony is a grand occasion for the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan for 100 years. This time, other than paying respects to our ancestors and testing the new generation, there is also an extremely important matter: the selection of our clan's young clan leader. I have inherited the position of clan leader for more than 1,000 years. Today, it is time to select our young clan leader, who will be the next clan leader. Once these words were spoken, many people's expressions became faintly excited. In fact, they already knew about this before, but now that they heard it personally, they couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion. For the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, this matter was of great significance. Even though most people knew that they didn't have the qualifications to run, they were still filled with curiosity and excitement. Being able to witness the young master's selection with her own eyes was also a blessing. The first item of the ancestral worship ceremony, bloodline talent test. Yi Zhao raised his hand and was about to point at Iran. However, after looking for a while, he did not see that familiar figure. He could not help but frown. He had taken a rough look earlier and thought that Iran was at the back. Only now did he realize that Iran had not arrived at all. This short pause immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Many people looked at each other. According to the rules, the first person to be tested in the ancestral worship ceremony was usually the most outstanding of the younger generation. This could be considered a good start. In their generation, Iran should be the first to go up. But he wasn't here yet. Seeing this, Elder Yi Gong hurriedly took half a step forward and explained in a low voice. Clan leader, a few days ago, Iran told me that he had recently comprehended a lot and had faint signs of a breakthrough. During this period, he has been in seclusion. Maybe he hasn't come out yet. It was not a small mistake to be late to the ancestral worship ceremony. But if it was for cultivation, it was understandable. Yi Zhao's expression eased a little. Iran has always known his limits. If it wasn't for special circumstances, I believe he wouldn't be like this. It seems that there is hope for a breakthrough this time. Elder Yi Gong hurriedly said. Thank you for your auspicious words, clan leader. It's just that he hasn't successfully broken through yet. As his master, I don't dare to say anything. Yi Zhao smiled. He is very talented. Everything will go smoothly. In fact, his strength is already outstanding. If he can successfully break through this time, he will be even more powerful. Elder Yi Gong lowered his head humbly. He is young and impetuous. There are still many things to learn. Although he seemed humble, there was a faint arrogance between his brows. Anyone with a discerning eye could see it clearly. Yi Zhao didn't mind. In recent years, Iran had indeed performed well. It was no wonder that Yi Gong was proud of him. Moreover, Iran had already opened 3 meridians. If he could really break through this time, he would have opened 4 meridians. Among the younger generation, there was no one who had reached this level. Yi Zhao raised his hand and pointed at a young man beside him. Enchanting, let's start with you. The young man who was called out was a little surprised, but he quickly reacted. Yes. With that, he walked straight forward and stopped when he reached the center of the square. This place was engraved with the totem of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. They were relying on this totem to conduct the test. Enchanting stood on the totem and looked down. Then, he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He was considered one of the most outstanding in the clan. Apart from Iran, he was basically the only one left. Enchanting and Iran were about the same age, but in comparison, his personality was much calmer and he usually kept a low profile. Apart from cultivation, he rarely interfered with the matters of the clan. In this aspect, he was the complete opposite of Iran. Everyone's gazes turned to him. Although it was not Iran who started, Enchanting's talent and strength were not bad. Let's begin. Yi Zhao ordered. Enchanting nodded and then closed his eyes. In the next moment, a scarlet gold flame suddenly surged out of his body. The flame instantly surrounded him, and the blazing heat caused the surrounding air to instantly heat up. Buzz! A strange buzzing sound suddenly came from under his feet. Then, the totem seemed to be ignited and gradually brightened. A warm and majestic light slowly emerged from under the totem. Everyone watched with rapt attention. Some did not even dare to blink, afraid that they would miss something. The totem of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had a rather special shape. It was like a ball of flame, but also like a phoenix that was about to spread its wings and soar. There were 9 lines at the end of its tail, like flames that had separated, but also like the tail of a phoenix. At this moment, as the flames on Enchanting's body burned, the 9 lines were lit up one by one. The first line. The second line. The third line. When the third line of flame lit up, everyone subconsciously held their breaths. Lighting up 3 lines meant that he had opened 3 meridians. 3 meridians were not rare. The key was whether he could continue. What was surprising was that the flames on Enchanting's body did not extinguish immediately. On the 4th line, specks of scarlet gold finally appeared. Hiss, he's going to light up the 4th line? Is that true? Only those who have opened 4 meridians can do that, right? I've never heard of Enchanting having a breakthrough before. He's been living in seclusion, focusing on cultivation and keeping a low profile. Maybe he really can light up the 4th line. Digression. After changing to a new platform, I'm still not used to it. Ha 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 ha, I can't find a place to talk about this after searching for a long time. Chapter 1585. The expressions of Yi Zhao and the rest also changed slightly, and their eyes were clearly much more serious than before. Only Elder Yi Gong's brows quickly furrowed. Enchanting had broken through? Why didn't he know? No matter how low-key he was, this kind of thing couldn't be hidden, right? If this was true, then, the competition for the young master's position would probably be much more intense. Poof. A small cluster of flames suddenly exploded and was annihilated. The 4th line on the totem was ultimately not ignited. The surroundings immediately quieted down, and everyone had different expressions. Yi Zhao and the rest were disappointed, but Elder Yi Gong secretly heaved a sigh of relief. On the other hand, Enchanting's expression was normal, and only a faint trace of regret appeared on his young face, but it quickly dissipated. It seemed that he had expected this. He raised his head. Enchanting is useless, and has disappointed the patriarch and elders. Yi Zhao had always been serious, but at this moment, he revealed a rare smile. Don't blame yourself. Although you haven't successfully opened the 4th meridian, it should be soon, right? Enchanting nodded, seeming a little embarrassed. Actually, I've been here for a long time, and recently, I've finally found a way, but my talent is limited, and I haven't completely comprehended and broken through. This is already very rare. As Yi Zhao spoke, he glanced at Elder Yi Shang beside him. Yi Shang, Enchanting is your disciple, why didn't you guide him properly? Elder Yi Shang said with a smile. I can help him for a while, but I can't help him forever. He's only opened the 4th meridian now. If he can't even comprehend this by himself, wouldn't it be even more difficult in the future? In the end, cultivation depends on oneself. As soon as these words were said, many people subconsciously looked at Elder Yi Gong. As expected, his face darkened a little. Everyone knew that Yi Ran had been cultivating with Elder Yi Gong recently, and probably received a lot of guidance. Wasn't Elder Yi Shang secretly slapping them in the face by saying this? Moreover, Enchanting has a steady personality and can endure. I believe that in time, he will definitely succeed. Yi Zhao nodded in agreement. He could tell that Enchanting was indeed only a step away from leaving the 4 branches. If the ancestral worship ceremony was delayed for a while longer, it might even cause Yi Ran a lot of trouble. Go back and cultivate well. Yi Zhao gave a few more instructions before letting Enchanting go back. Next, when they saw that Enchanting had only opened 3 meridians, the people behind him all let out sighs of relief. Although they couldn't compare to the top few, they didn't want to be left too far behind. Fortunately, Enchanting's results did not make them feel too uncomfortable. The tests were carried out one after another. Elder Yi Gong watched from above. Seeing that no one had opened 4 meridians, his mood improved. Those who had opened 3 meridians naturally had different levels of talent and strength. But no matter what, it was still a far cry from someone who had opened 4 meridians. Now, he could only hope that Yi Ran would be able to successfully break through. Time passed slowly. On the square, everyone carried out the test in an orderly manner. Everything proceeded smoothly and calmly. Those who could come here had already transformed into human form. In other words, they had at least opened 3 meridians. But because these crimson gold heavenly phoenixes were very young, most of them had yet to open 4 meridians. More than 20 of them had already been tested. As expected, none of them had opened 4 meridians. Yi Zhao couldn't help but look in the direction of Fenghuang Valley. His eyes were deep. However, Elder Yi Gong gradually became anxious. Because more than half of the tests were over, but Yi Ran had yet to arrive. In fact, there wasn't even any movement. Previously, he had repeatedly reminded him not to miss the ancestral worship ceremony. If he didn't make it, it would be useless even if he successfully opened 4 meridians. It was already so late. Yi Ran should be here, Elder Yi Gong frowned. Could it be that he encountered some trouble during his breakthrough? First Elder, the children are almost done with their tests. Is Yi Ran still coming? Elder Yi Yu asked in a curious manner. If he's any later, he won't be able to make it. Elder Yi Gong was already frustrated. Hearing this, he became even more frustrated. He'll naturally come. Elder Yi Yu's eyes darted around as he smiled. Why don't you go and take a look yourself? No matter what, it's always better to take a look, isn't it? Yi Ran has always been hardworking. We don't want to see him delay time and affect the important matters. What do you think? Although Elder Yi Gong didn't like him, he was a little tempted when he heard this. This was a serious matter. It was always better to be careful. He looked at Yi Zhao hesitantly. Yi Zhao nodded. Elder Yi Gong heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you, Patriarch. I'll go soon. With that, he moved and headed in the direction of Fenghuang Valley. However, at this moment, a rumbling sound suddenly came from afar. Elder Yi Gong was shocked and immediately focused his gaze. Everyone in the square also turned their heads. In the distance, a figure suddenly rushed out from the shadows of the mountains. His body was burning with crimson gold flames, and his aura was shocking. The surrounding heaven and earth energy also began to surge towards him rapidly. Elder Yi Gong was delighted. Yi ran. It looked like he was finally going to break through. As if to verify his guess, the flames on Yi Ran's body quickly gathered and condensed into the shape of a long feather in front of him. The feather moved slowly. There were already 3 crimson gold lines between Yi Ran's brows, shining brightly. Following the movement of the feather, the 4th line was slowly forming. Elder Yi Gong was ecstatic. However, just as the 4th line was about to be completed, a loud sound came from the depths of Fenghuang Valley. In an instant, crimson gold flames splashed everywhere, and heaven and earth shook. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1586. The feather in front of Yi Ran seemed to be affected and started to sway. The remaining half of the vein was not completed. This made Yi Ran anxious. But this was a critical moment, and he did not dare to move. He could only stare at the feather in front of him and pray in his heart. It must be fine. It must be successful. No matter what happened over there, his 4th meridian must be opened. Because of his nervousness, his body started to tremble. Unfortunately, things did not go as he wished. Before he had time to think further, he suddenly felt a terrifying berserk energy surging towards him from behind. At the same time, an indescribably strong pressure descended. The feather in front of Yi Ran swayed even more violently. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the remaining Tianlei in the sky finally came crashing down. All of them landed in the depths of Fenghuang Valley. At this moment, the sky changed color, as if doomsday had arrived. Yi Ran's eyes widened, the feather in front of him suddenly changed direction and flew in that direction. No! Before Yi Ran could finish his sentence, his body shook violently, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Ran. The expression of Elder Yi Gong, who had been observing the situation, changed, and he immediately rushed over. He was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Fenghuang Valley. But when he arrived, he realized that the entire Fenghuang Valley was covered by that terrifying energy. It was very difficult for outsiders to enter. His speed was greatly reduced, as if he was walking in a swamp, and it was difficult for him to move forward. Luckily, Iran's position was not far from the exit of Fenghuang Valley, and Elder Yi Gong did not spend too much time to reach him. Elder Yi Gong's heart sank when he saw Iran's current state. His face and body were covered in blood. His complexion was exceptionally pale, and his eyes were dim. His aura also seemed to have withered significantly. It was obvious that the previous attack had a huge impact on him. Actually, this was normal. Iran was already on the verge of breaking through, and it was a time when he could not be disturbed. But such an accident happened, and it could be considered as forcefully interrupting his breakthrough. He was unprepared, and naturally, he was in a mess. But what worried Elder Yi Gong even more was that there were only 3 veins left between Iran's eyebrows. The 4th one that he had painstakingly drawn was only half completed before it was abruptly stopped. Iran suffered from the backlash, and the remaining half of the veins had already dissipated. The sudden loss of the feather support was a huge blow to him. At this moment, he was filled with anger and resentment, so the situation was naturally even worse. Moss. Master. Iran's mouth was full of blood. When he saw Elder Yi Gong, he spoke with great difficulty. His voice was extremely weak, and in the midst of the continuous explosions in Fenghuang Valley, it was exceptionally pale. Elder Yi Gong couldn't care less. He quickly took action and brought Iran out. Iran looked back, unwilling to give up. That ball of fire was burning fiercely in the air. Countless bolts of heavenly lightning struck the surface. Vaguely, there seemed to be a figure within. Right at this moment, the reddish-golden feather had already flown over. It hovered in midair, swaying gently in front of the burning reddish-gold flame. Iran's eyes widened. His eyes were bloodshot. It was it. It was the crimson gold sky phoenix that had returned. It had snatched his meridian opening opportunity. That reddish-gold feather had been left behind by the crimson gold sky phoenix clan's ancestor, and there was only one of it in the world. All crimson gold sky phoenixes needed this feather to open their meridians. Everything had been fine on his side, and the 4th meridian was about to open. Who would have thought that a troublemaker would come out of nowhere and interrupt his breakthrough process without saying a word? He even snatched the feather away by force. Iran was filled with anger, and it burned fiercely. Looking at the fluttering feather and the blinding flame in the distance, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He struggled to go back. Elder Yi Gong noticed his actions, and his brows furrowed even more. Iran. What are you doing? Iran continued to stare in that direction. His voice was hoarse and filled with deep resentment. Master. It's too much. Elder Yi Gong noticed that something was wrong with his expression and turned back to look. However, when he saw it, his expression changed as well. Apart from shock and anger, he was also in disbelief. He had also stayed in the position of head elder for many years. What kind of great winds and waves had he not seen before? But the situation before him was too strange. The figure in the flame was obviously the crimson gold sky phoenix that had just returned. It had snatched Iran's meridian opening opportunity. Actually, in the crimson gold sky phoenix clan, because there was only one ancestor feather that could open meridians, it was inevitable that there would be fights over it. Under normal circumstances, the stronger one was, the higher the chance of success. That was normal. But the situation before him, that crimson gold sky phoenix had yet to transform into human form. How did it win against Iran? While Elder Yi Gong was in a daze, a gust of wind suddenly swept through Fenghuang Valley. He was caught off guard and was flung away by this terrifying force. Iran's body flew out uncontrollably as well. At that moment, the feather finally drew a line. It was as smooth as flowing water, free and easy. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. That crimson gold sky phoenix had opened its meridians. Digression: when uploading the 5th update, I accidentally deleted it all. After searching for a while, I couldn't find a single word. I had to rewrite everything. An author cursed as he shut down his writing software and kicked away his broken laptop. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1587. How? Elder Egong widened his eyes in disbelief. Didn't the crimson gold heavenly phoenix just break through not long ago? Why is it opening meridians now? Furthermore, it caused such a huge commotion. Iran felt as if all his strength had been sucked out of him when he saw that stroke of the brush. His legs turned to jelly, and he almost fell to the ground. Elder Egong was shocked and hurriedly pulled him up. However, Iran's eyes were dim. He stared at the ball of flame and could not help but laugh at himself. He had worked so hard to summon that feather and open meridians. Who knew that he would be killed halfway? He knew that after today's failure, it would be even harder for him to open meridians. Master. I've disappointed you, Iran muttered and spat out another mouthful of blood. He was filled with anger and had nowhere to vent it. His chest was about to explode. There were too many things he wanted to say, but he did not know where to start. You must help me. Before Iran could finish his sentence, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. Iran. Seeing this, Elder Egong became even more anxious and furious. The violent energy in Fenghuang Valley was still sweeping over. He could not stay here any longer. Elder Egong looked back deeply, then gritted his teeth and left. Elder Egong brought the unconscious Iran back to the square in front of Fenghuang Shrine. Seeing them return, everyone kept quiet, but their gazes landed on Iran. His face was pale, and the corners of his mouth and chest were stained with blood. His breathing was weak. He looked like he had never been in such a sorry state before. Many people looked at each other with complicated expressions. Who would have thought that this would happen? Clan leader. Please, you must seek justice for Iran. As soon as Elder Egong arrived, he spoke with great anger. That Shangguanyu and that crimson gold heavenly phoenix are too much. They've made up their minds to take Iran's life. Yi Zhao walked over with a frown. He bent down to check on Iran's condition, then heaved a sigh of relief. Don't worry, he only suffered a backlash from a portion of his power. At the same time, his anger attacked his heart, causing him to fall unconscious. His life is not in danger. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and placed his broad palm on Iran's forehead. A bright ray of light seemed to surge out of his palm and quickly flowed into Iran's body. His originally pale face began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, he withdrew his hand. Iran's eyebrows twitched, then he slowly woke up. His eyes were still a little dazed. Master? His voice was weak and hoarse, but he was finally awake. Yi Zhao said, fortunately, there aren't any major problems. I'll be able to recover after a few days of rest. Elder Egong was still in a daze. He didn't expect Yi Zhao to act so decisively, and Iran actually woke up just like that. This, Yi Zhao glanced at him and said indifferently, the ancestor's golden feather is our tribe's sacred item. It won't take the lives of our tribesmen. Egong, as the great elder, shouldn't you know this best? Why did you say those words and make everyone nervous? Elder Egong was momentarily at a loss for words, then he clenched his teeth. Clan leader, I'm not saying that there's a problem with the ancestor's golden feather. It's Shangguanyu and the others. Iran was at a crucial point in his breakthrough and couldn't be disturbed. But they just had to snatch the ancestor's golden feather away at this moment. This is clearly intentional. He pointed at the depths of Fenghuang Valley, at the ball of fire that was burning fiercely. If they didn't use any underhanded methods, how could the ancestor's golden feather be forcefully snatched away while Iran was opening his meridians? Even if Iran's current injury wasn't fatal, the key point was that it caused his meridian opening to fail. Today was the ancestral worship ceremony. Without opening his fourth meridian, how was he different from others? How could he fight for the position of young master? Needless to say, he was injured now. This was the greatest loss. When Elder Gong thought about how his years of hard work had gone to waste, he almost went crazy with anger. Clan leader. They conspired against the law and should be killed. Because of his agitation, Elder Gong's voice was very sharp. Everyone in the square heard him clearly. Yi Zhao's eyes were cold. Elder Yu was the first to speak. Great Elder, aren't your words a little biased? I feel that this is just a coincidence. Iran wanted to open his meridians and summon the ancestors' golden feather. But at this time, Dumpling also wanted to open her meridians. It was purely an accident, an accident. Elder Gong laughed coldly. An accident? You've been in the clan for so many years. It's not like you haven't seen people opening their meridians at the same time, right? But when have you ever seen someone snatch the ancestors' golden feather halfway? Under normal circumstances, this matter was based on first come, first served. Now that someone had snatched it from them, they still had to swallow their anger? Impossible. This Great Elder means that Shangguanyu and Dumpling have already reached the stage where they can control the ancestors' golden feather at will? Elder Yu blinked his eyes. Elder Gong suddenly choked. The expression on his face froze for a moment before he hurriedly said, "That's right." What nonsense are you talking about? When have I ever said such a thing? The ancestors' golden feather was considered a supreme existence in the clan. How could he dare to speak rudely? But what you said just now. Wasn't that what you meant? Elder Yu raised his chin. Yes, everyone saw it just now. It was the ancestors' golden feather that went to Dumpling's side. Moreover, it did open Dumpling's meridians just now. When it drew that line, everyone saw it clearly. Elder Gong's chest seemed to be surging wildly, almost driving him crazy. Even if it wants to open its meridians, it has to wait until Iran is done. What's going on now? So brazen. Really too arrogant. Elder Yu also laughed. Actually, this matter is not easy to say. Under normal circumstances, it is indeed according to the order of meridians opening. But Grand Elder seems to have forgotten that there is a prerequisite: the strong are respected. If they are both opening their meridians, naturally, the one with a higher level will have the advantage. After Elder Gong heard this, he was stunned for a moment. After a moment, he finally reacted and almost laughed out of anger. Your words are too laughable. You have to know that Iran is about to open his fourth meridian. And that crimson gold heavenly phoenix is only at the second meridian. Isn't it obvious who's better and who's worse? You said that it can beat Iran. Isn't it too laughable? Elder Yu rubbed his chin and didn't seem to care about his words. He smiled and said, "Yes. Tell me, what's the reason why a second meridian can beat a fourth meridian?" The expression on Elder Gong's face suddenly froze. Yi Zhao said calmly, "Contacting the meridian opener can take the ancestors' golden feather. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network." Chapter 1588. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. Elder Gong opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Continuous meridians opening. To many in the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, this was just a legend. After the creation of the world, two ancient divine beasts were born in the chaos. Tens of thousands of years had passed since then. And in this long period of time, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan continued to multiply, and their numbers were not small. But among them, those who could continuously open meridians could be counted on one hand. Crimson Gold Sky Phoenixes were born with one meridian. After 100 years, they could open a second meridian. After 100 years, they could try to open a third meridian and transform into a human. Success was not guaranteed. Those who were more talented would be able to do it when they were a little over 100 years old. But there were also those with average talent who were still outside the door of the third meridian at 200 or 300 years old. And after opening 3 meridians, it was even more difficult to advance. This was basically the time to completely rely on one's talent. Those with outstanding talent could break through smoothly. Those who opened the 6th meridian would be promoted to elder. And those who could open the 7th meridian would be the clan leader. This was also why they had to pick the one with the best talent when selecting the young master. Only with power could one have the right to speak. If they could not even control the situation, what else could they say? Continuous meridians opening? Amidst the dead silence, Iran was the first to react. He looked up at Fenghuang Valley again. The ball of flame was still burning, and the figure inside could not be seen clearly. But the ancestor's golden feather had not disappeared. It was still floating in the air, as if waiting for a second stroke. How is this possible? Iran murmured. His eyes were filled with disbelief. However, his heart had already completely sunk. He had been in a fit of anger and did not have time to think so much. But now that he had calmed down, he realized that things might be as Yi Zhao and the others had said. That crimson gold sky phoenix was really going to open meridians continuously. Otherwise, how could it have so easily snatched the ancestor's golden feather from him? After opening meridians, the ancestor's golden feather would automatically disappear until the next summoning. But now, it was still there, perfectly fine. If it wasn't to continue opening meridians, then what was it? Iran couldn't accept it. His heart felt like it was being crushed by something, and he found it hard to breathe. Preposterous. How laughable. That crimson gold heavenly phoenix had only broken through a few months ago. Now that it had returned to the clan, it was going to open its meridians consecutively. Iran suddenly recalled what his master had said to him before. At that time, he had said that the crimson gold heavenly phoenix might become a threat to him. At that time, he didn't think much of it. But now, he finally knew where his master's grave expression came from. At this moment, Elder Yishang raised his chin and said softly, "That's right. Look, the ancestral golden feather is moving." Hearing this, everyone subconsciously looked over. Sure enough, they saw that the reddish gold feather was slowly drawing a second line. The square was completely silent. Shock, nervousness, suspicion, lamentation, envy, everyone had different expressions on their faces. It was obvious that they were feeling very complicated at this moment. Actually, if it was someone else from the clan, they might not have such a big reaction. But it just had to be that crimson gold heavenly phoenix that had just returned from outside. Didn't they say that it had only broken through a few months ago? Didn't they say that it was a lowly 9-colored heavenly pheasant in the past? More importantly, until now, it hadn't even broken its contract with that human. They had always looked down on the human race and rarely interacted with them. They even viewed the contract with a human as a huge stain. But who knew that this crimson gold heavenly phoenix that they secretly looked down on and contracted with a human would actually win against all of them? One had to know that even clan leader Yi Zhao hadn't opened his meridians consecutively. How could they not be shocked by this scene? "Clan leader, looks like you're going to lose the bet this time." Elder Yu shrugged his shoulders. However, there was a smile on his face. "After so many years, this is the first time you've lost, right? And to a human." Yi Zhao put his hands behind his back and looked into the distance with a heavy gaze. There seemed to be waves surging in his eyes. He didn't say anything, but there was no anger on his face. It seemed that he had silently agreed. In fact, although he looked calm and indifferent on the surface, he was actually shocked at this moment. When he proposed the bet, he didn't think much about it. In his opinion, the possibility of Shanghai Yu being able to help Dumpling transform into a human within a month was almost zero. As long as she failed, the contract would have to be broken. This way, it would save both parties from continuing to argue. It was undeniable that because of Dumpling's pure bloodline, he actually had some extravagant hopes in the depths of his heart. But he didn't think that it would actually succeed. Until now, when he saw the ancestor's golden feather drawing another line, he finally believed that all of this had really happened. Dumpling is still very young. It's not easy for her to open 3 meridians directly. During this period, Shanghai, you caused such a huge commotion in Tianlai. This should be the reason, right? Elder Yi Shang said with a smile. We have misunderstood her previously. But fortunately, EU has been watching over her all this time, and no one has rashly disturbed her. If Dumpling fails to open her meridians because of this, we will suffer a great loss. No matter what, Dumpling was the bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. She had continuously opened her meridians and broken through. This was a joyous occasion for the entire clan. Elder Yi Gong's face turned pale. Of course, he could tell that these words were mocking him. After enduring for a while, he couldn't hold it in anymore and walked in front of Yi Zhao. Yi Zhao saw his angry expression and narrowed his eyes slightly. Yi Gong, what are you trying to do? Elder Yi Gong gritted his teeth. Clan leader, I don't want to do anything. I just want to seek justice for Iran. He suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Fenghuang Valley. I know. It can continuously open its meridians because it is capable. But you can't be biased because of this. Now, it has opened 3 meridians, but what about Iran? He could have opened his 4th meridian. There's no way you don't know how much he's sacrificed for this day. Now, just because that Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix wants to continuously open its meridians, it can do whatever it wants and cause harm to others. Moreover, although it opened its 3rd meridian today, it is still unknown whether it is good or bad for it to grow by rushing it. No one can guarantee that it can continue to open its meridians in the future. But Iran has truly lost the chance to open his 4th meridian. Clan leader, which is more important, do you know in your heart? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1589. Elder Yi Gong's voice was cold and stern. Every word was sonorous and powerful. Many people looked at each other. Actually, what he said was not without reason. That Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix could continuously open meridians, which was indeed powerful. However, it was also a fact that it had interrupted Iran's meridians. Iran's talent had always been very good, and he was number 1 among the younger generation. The losses he had suffered this time were not small at all. And this was undoubtedly a loss for their entire clan. Moreover, that Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix was still young. If it forcefully opened 3 meridians, it might indeed cause the opposite effect. Wouldn't that be even worse? One was a genius who had yet to grow up, while the other was a seedling who already had some strength. How to choose was indeed a difficult problem. Yi Zhao glanced at the dejected Iran and frowned slightly. I've already said that Iran's internal and external injuries are not serious. Moreover, I've personally helped him recover just now. As long as he goes back and rests for a few days, he will recover. The matter is not as serious as you say. Yi Gong, why are you so aggressive? It's not that I'm aggressive, but Shang Guanyu and the others' actions are too despicable. Elder Yi Gong immediately retorted. Patriarch, Iran's physical injuries can indeed recover quickly. However, what if this matter leaves a psychological barrier in his heart? That will have an extremely serious impact on his future cultivation. That was an even greater hidden danger. Elder Yi Shang frowned. Grand Elder, are you questioning the Patriarch? Elder Yi Gong's heart skipped a beat, and he felt a little uneasy. However, after thinking about it, he still did not retreat. He could not retreat. Today, Iran had failed to open his meridians. He probably had no hope of becoming the young master. He had to fight for the greatest benefits. Patriarch, I just want an explanation. The atmosphere was cold. The cold atmosphere made everyone tremble in fear, and they did not dare to say anything. However, just when everyone thought that Yi Zhao would be angry, he suddenly laughed. This smile was very short, and it did not extend to the corners of his eyes. Elder Yi Gong's heart turned cold. If that's the case, then Iran is too useless. Yi Zhao's voice was indifferent, with a trace of cold dignity that could not be disobeyed. Such a cowardly person is not qualified to continue competing for the position of young master. Elder Yi Gong's expression froze for a moment. He never thought that Yi Zhao would say something like that. Clan leader. What do you mean by this? His lips trembled slightly, and there was a hint of urgency and worry in his voice. Yi Zhao's smile faded. It's literally what I said. His answer was cold and merciless, instantly causing Elder Yi Gong and Yi Ran to feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. I'm not. Only then did Elder Yi Gong realize what a stupid mistake he had made. He said that Yi Ran's future cultivation might be affected. Wasn't that pushing him away from the position of young master? Not to mention them, no clan in this world would allow a powerless person to take the position. Elder Yi Gong was filled with regret. Of all the things he could say, why did he have to leave such a topic for others to gossip about? Yi Ran was also stunned, and his face turned pale. At this moment, it was as if a string that had been taut in his mind had snapped. He opened his mouth and could not help but defend himself. Clan leader, could it be that in your heart, I'm inferior to that bastard who came back from the outside? The surroundings suddenly fell silent. Some people could not help but cover their mouths. Yi Ran was really crazy. It was fine to say some things in private, but how could he say it in public? Even Elder Yi Gong looked at him in shock and anger. Yi Ran. You shut up. I'm just telling the truth. Yi Ran had indeed lost his mind. No one knew how long he had waited for this day and how much he had sacrificed. He had always thought that the position of young master was his and could not be changed. But today, he had been forcefully robbed of his ancestors' golden feather and failed to open his meridians. He was clearly the one who had suffered a loss, but the clan leader and the others had been siding with that bastard. Now, the clan leader said that he was not qualified to compete for the position of young master. How could he endure it any longer? No matter how powerful it is, it has only opened its third meridian now. I opened my fourth meridian and was messed up by it, but you don't care at all? How can there be such logic in this world? Yi Ran was filled with anger. He was not convinced. He was unwilling. Hey, Yi Ran, watch your words. Dumpling is already the bloodline of our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Whether it opened its meridians consecutively or not, you can't humiliate it like this. Elder Yi reminded him. He no longer had the usual smile on his face. It was obvious that he was very dissatisfied with Yi Ran's words. Yi Ran was used to being arrogant and had never taken others seriously. But he would more or less restrain himself and would never be so presumptuous. Clan leader, Yi Ran's brain is muddled from anger. I'll take him back now. Elder Yi Gong hurriedly tried to save him. However, Yi Zhao raised his hand. No need. What you said is not without reason. Yi Ran should be given an explanation for this matter. Elder Yi Gong's voice stopped abruptly. For some reason, when he heard this, he did not feel the slightest bit of joy. Only uneasiness surged into his heart. Yi Ran clenched his fists tightly with a furious expression. Yi Zhao sized him up and suddenly asked, "Are you not convinced? A junior who opened his third meridian stole your chance to break through? Do you think you're better than it?" Yi Ran did not say anything, but it was obvious that he agreed. Yi Zhao suddenly raised his eyebrows. Then what if it also opened its fourth meridian? Yi Ran's expression suddenly froze. Yi Zhao raised his chin. Yi Ran turned around and immediately widened his eyes. That ancestral golden feather had not disappeared yet. Digression. 60 Clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1590. At this moment, the sky above Fenghuang Valley was filled with dark clouds that moved with the wind. All of the heavenly lightning within had already descended. At this moment, it was completely clean, leaving behind only darkness. Only the reddish-gold flame in the sky was still burning silently. One could vaguely see a blurry silhouette within. The ancestor's golden feather was hanging in front of it, as if it was waiting for something. This is it's going to continue. In the square in front of the Phoenix Shrine, everyone's faces were once again filled with shock. Opening meridians consecutively was one thing, but to open the fourth meridian directly. Wasn't this too crazy? Elder Yi Gong was in a daze as he looked at the scene in the distance. His mind was in a complete mess. This. Didn't it just break through to the reddish-gold heavenly phoenix? Logically speaking, it would take at least 100 years to open the third meridian. Not to mention the fourth meridian. But now, all these things had happened at the same time. And this was under the condition that it had contracted with a mere exalted god. How did it do it? It wasn't just him, even Elder Yi Shang and the others couldn't help but gasp at this moment. They had long thought that Dumpling's talent should be quite good and should be stronger than many people in the clan. But they didn't expect the result to be so shocking. Opening meridians consecutively was already extremely rare, let alone opening the first meridian to the fourth meridian. It was almost unheard of. Ran clenched his teeth, as if something was crazily surging in his heart. It's still unknown whether it will succeed. If we force it, it might end up in vain. In the past, there were people who forcefully opened meridians in the clan, but without exception, they didn't end up well. It wasn't that easy to open meridians. Without accumulation, without preparation, to act so rashly, how could it be so easy? Hearing that, Elder Yi glanced at him and couldn't help but laugh. Some people really wouldn't give up until they reached the Yellow River. They wouldn't turn back until they hit a wall. Yi Gong's face was ashen, and only Yi Ran was left holding on to the last bit of wishful thinking. Regardless of whether Dumpling could continue to open meridians, she had already displayed talent that surpassed all the younger generation. Elder Yi shook his head. With such a temperament, she wouldn't be able to achieve great things. If Yi Ran became the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, that would be the clan's misfortune. He quickly retracted his gaze and looked at Fenghuang Valley again. Time passed slowly, and it seemed exceptionally long. Countless pairs of eyes were looking at the same spot. They were all waiting for the ancestors' golden feathers' actions. However, even after a long while, it remained motionless in the air. Ran sneered in his heart. As he had said, the fourth meridian was not that easy to open. If there was still no reaction from the ancestor gold feather after a while, it would prove that it would definitely lose this time. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the ancestral golden feather to start trembling. Some people secretly looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. If that crimson gold heavenly phoenix really directly opened the fourth meridian, then they would really have no face at all. To think that they had looked down on the other party previously. In the blink of an eye, the other party had trampled all of them under his feet. Even if she couldn't open her fourth meridian, her talent at such a young age was already beyond their reach. Yi Zhao's brows furrowed imperceptibly as a trace of disappointment appeared in his heart. He didn't have much hope, but Dumpling's performance surprised him. Naturally, he thought that she could continue to break through and open her fourth meridian. But now, it seemed like it would be difficult. Everyone was like that. Without hope, there was no disappointment. However, the current situation had exceeded his expectations. After a short period of depression, he regained his composure. Even if Dumpling had only opened 3 meridians, she was still very competitive in today's ancestral worship ceremony. Bang! At that moment, a strange cracking sound came from the depths of Fenghuang Valley. Then, a slender and exquisite figure leaped out from the undulating mountain range. Yi Zhao and the rest were stunned. Shang Guanyu? They had been so focused on Dumpling that they had forgotten that Shang Guanyu was there too. The wind whistled, and her clothes fluttered in the wind. Her black hair danced in the wind, and she looked cool and unrestrained. She moved and dashed to the side of the reddish gold flame. Thus, it became the scene of ancestor Jin Yu before Dumpling, and her after Dumpling. Why did she go over? Elder Yi Shang tensed up. Dumpling was at the crucial moment of opening her meridians, and there couldn't be any mistakes. If she went over now, she might disturb it. Should we let her come over? Elder Yi Shang turned to look at Yi Zhao. As the clan leader, Yi Zhao's power and ability were undoubtedly the strongest here. If he was willing to help, he could bring Shangguan Hui back without disturbing Dumpling. Yi Zhao pondered for a moment when he heard this, but he shook his head. Let's wait and see. Elder Yi Shang was a little surprised. Why did the clan leader seem to trust Shangguan Yu? Elder Yi Yu nudged him with his elbow and lowered his voice. Aya, if you ask me, Dumpling is still Shangguan Yu's contracted divine beast. She wouldn't do anything to harm Dumpling. Don't worry. Elder Yi Shang nodded hesitantly when he heard this. Based on what had happened before, Shangguan Yu did indeed treat Dumpling well. But, did the clan leader think the same way? Since when did he trust Shangguan Yu so much? Dumpling. A strong wind blew, and violent energy surged in all directions. Chu Luiyue managed to stabilize herself and looked at the burning flame in front of her. Dumpling, let me help you. Earlier, she had been waiting below to watch. When she saw that Dumpling had successfully opened her third meridian, she was naturally very happy. She thought that the matter would be over, but who would have thought that Dumpling would try to open her fourth meridian? I didn't discuss this with her before. But now wasn't the time to talk about this. Sensing that Dumpling's strength seemed to be unable to cope, Chu Luiyue rushed up without thinking. Dumpling didn't respond. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips and closed her eyes. Boom! A reddish gold flame surged out from her palm. She had a contract with Dumpling, so she could naturally convert the force in her body into the crimson gold sky phoenix clan's flame. Then, she waved her hand, and the flame quickly flew out and merged into the ball of fire. Chu Luiyue's strength began to be consumed rapidly. The reddish gold feather that had been trembling but unable to move finally moved. It slowly but firmly drew the third meridian. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1591. This time, the reddish gold feather moved very slowly. It was completely different from the previous 2 times when it moved so smoothly. But it still moved in the end. Looking at it gently moving in the air, the square in front of the Phoenix Shrine fell into a short silence. Then, all kinds of noises and discussions erupted. Ancestor Jinyu actually moved. Shangguan Yu really helped. Yes. I think it was after she helped that Ancestor Jinyu officially started to open meridians. I thought that the 4th meridian couldn't be opened. Didn't they say that she's just a high god now? Logically speaking, she shouldn't be that capable, right? Who knows? More importantly, a human helping to open meridians, what's going on? Everyone was discussing animatedly. They were obviously shocked by this scene. They never thought that Ancestor Jinyu would actually continue to open meridians with the help of a human. No one would believe it even if they told others about it. Ran was stunned on the spot. His expression was sluggish, and the mocking smile on his face had yet to fade. At this moment, he looked extremely awkward and strange. Everything that happened before his eyes was beyond his expectations. Just a moment ago, he was still waiting to see Shangguan Yu and that bastard make a fool of himself. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, the situation would turn around? Of course, he couldn't accept it, and he wasn't willing to accept it. Therefore, he could only stand there stiffly, as if his soul had been sucked away. Elder Yi Gong wasn't any better than him. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind: it's over. Only Yi Zhao stared intently at that side. There seemed to be stars flickering in his eyes. This 4th meridian was indeed much more difficult than before. The energy in Chu Luiyue's body was rapidly depleting, but Dumpling didn't move at all. If not for the fact that Chu Luiyue could feel its aura, she would have thought that something had happened to it. Her eyes were burning as she stared at that ball of flame. The reddish gold light splashed. She could only vaguely see a blurry outline, but not its specific appearance. It should be waiting for an opportunity to transform into a human. Chu Luiyue pondered in her heart. In fact, she was also very curious. Dumpling had been with her for many years and was like family to her. But before that, she had never thought about what Tuanzi would look like when she transformed into a human being. Continuously opening her meridians and transforming into a human form, Dumpling had done what others had done for hundreds of years in just a month. Naturally, it would consume more time and energy. Suddenly, a faint sound came from the flames. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat, but she suddenly felt a gentle force coming from it, and then she was pushed a distance away. This was Dumpling's aura. Chu Liyue only hesitated for a moment before retreating along with this force. It wasn't until they were quite a distance away that they finally stopped. She retracted her power and looked up at Dumpling. At this moment, the reddish gold feather finally finished drawing the complete pattern. Fourth meridian, open. At this moment, everyone in front of the Phoenix shrine fell silent. Iran's legs went weak and he fell to the ground, his face pale. Elder Igong's body swayed, and his vision turned black. Elder Yu couldn't help but take a few steps forward, his face full of excitement, and he punched his own palm. It's done. Although Yi Zhao didn't move or speak, the expression in his eyes had changed greatly. The usual indifference and disdain had faded away, and what replaced it was unconcealed joy and excitement. Elder Yi Shang was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. She actually, really did it. The purest bloodline is indeed extraordinary. He didn't deliberately lower his voice, so many people around heard it. For a moment, several pairs of eyes looked over in disbelief. Did I hear wrongly? Iran also looked as if he was struck by lightning. He stiffly raised his neck and said in a hoarse voice, "Purest bloodline?" Elder Yi Shang looked at him with a smile, as if he was a little surprised. Why, didn't your master tell you before? On the day Dumpling returned, we already knew that she had the purest bloodline. Iran's ears buzzed, and his vision turned white. It was as if a sharp hammer was constantly pounding on his head, causing him great pain and making him dizzy. He glanced at Elder Igong. Elder Igong's face was expressionless, and he slowly closed his eyes. This was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Iran lowered his head and was silent for a while, then he laughed softly. He was laughing at himself. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. What a disgrace. He thought that the position of young master was secure. But it turned out that they already had someone else in mind. The purest bloodline, what did he have to fight with the other party? His only advantage had been overtaken at that moment. He laughed, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. It kept flowing, and soon the front of his shirt was dyed red. But at this moment, no one cared about him. Everyone's attention was on Dumpling. The purest bloodline. That was almost an existence that only existed in legends. They didn't expect it to appear like this today. No wonder it could open meridians consecutively, no wonder it could open the fourth meridian directly. After this, who could compete with it? The burning flames were gradually swallowed by Dumpling. Its figure gradually appeared. Chu Liuyue's hands unconsciously clenched in his sleeves, and his eyes didn't blink, for fear of missing something. Dumpling, what would it be like? At this moment, a chubby, white, and tender little hand suddenly reached out from the flames. Digression, Hong Xiao is piking in February. I hope everyone can support her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1592. Immediately after, a small figure emerged from the flames. Chu Liyue widened her eyes slightly. It was a child who looked to be about 3 or 4 years old. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyes were as black as grapes. Her eyelashes were long and thick, and her lips were as red as the most delicate rose petals. She was extremely adorable. She had 2 round buns on her head, tied up with a crimson hair tie. 2 golden bells were strung on each rope. When she shook her head, a crisp bell sound could be heard. She was wearing an exquisitely tailored lotus leaf dress. The entire lotus leaf dress gradually changed color. The bottom was crimson, and the top gradually turned golden. The color was rich and vibrant, bright and resplendent. Under the sunlight, there were even specks of starlight twinkling. From afar, it looked like a cluster of burning flames. She raised her chubby little hand and rubbed her eyes. She yawned as if she had just woken up. There was silence between heaven and earth. Chu Luiyue was also stunned. A girl? More importantly, she was so young. As if sensing her gaze, Dumpling put down her hand and looked in her direction. When she saw her face clearly, a huge smile bloomed on her round, snow-white little face. "Ah, you." Her eyes were bright, and her voice was crisp. Her eyes seemed to be filled with a galaxy of stars. Then, she opened her arms wide and ran towards them. Her 2 little feet were bare, and they looked clean and cute. However, she was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she was already in front of Chu Luiyue. She directly jumped into her arms. Before Chu Luiyue could react, she instinctively reached out and there was a ball of chubby little thing in her arms. "Ah, you." Dumpling dragged out her name and called her with a strong sense of coquettishness. Chu Luiyue's heart instantly melted into a ball. She lowered her head and looked in her arms. The corners of her lips could not help but curl up. Dumpling had always been thick-skinned. She had always thought, she did not expect it to be such a beautiful and cute little girl. "Dumpling?" Chu Luiyue tried to shout, but his voice was much gentler than before. It was clearly the same name, but when he saw this small one, he felt completely different. Hearing her voice, Dumpling looked up and blinked. "Huh?" Chu Luiyue couldn't hold back. He held her little face and kissed her. Instantly, he felt comfortable. So soft. How fragrant. So cute. Tuanzi blushed, but it was elated. It almost jumped up in Chu Luiyue's arms as it stretched out its 2 short arms and hugged Chu Luiyue's neck. Then, it quickly kissed Chu Luiyue's cheek and buried its head in Chu Luiyue's shoulders at an even faster speed. Dumpling loves you the most. One of her head was rubbing against the other, while the other was rubbing against the other. Chu Luiyue couldn't help laughing. Even though her appearance had changed greatly, the fact that she liked to snuggle in her shoulder was exactly the same as before. Chu Luiyue changed her position and hugged her more comfortably. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Girls were indeed different from boys. If this was Debao, TSK. Let's go back and meet the clan leader. Chu Luiyue asked as she glanced in the direction of the Phoenix Shrine. Even though they were still some distance away, it was obvious that those people were looking in their direction. Dumpling had finally transformed into a human and opened her 4th meridian. It was only right for her to make a trip. Dumpling hugged her and nodded vigorously. "I'll go with you." The dark clouds in the sky gradually dispersed and the wind died down. After a month of riots, Fenghuang Valley finally regained its peace. It would be better if one ignored the messy scene. Chu Luiyue coughed guiltily as she looked at the mountain wall that was charred black from the lightning strikes and the light balls that were scattered all over the place due to the violent force. Sin. She had smashed the place where they slept. She hoped that they would overlook this matter on account of her helping Dumpling. Chu Luiyue hugged Dumpling even tighter. She took a step and headed straight for the Phoenix Shrine. Seeing that one person, no, the 2 of them, one big and one small, the countless people waiting in the plaza didn't seem to have reacted yet. Chu Luiyue landed with Dumpling in her arms. She didn't care about the gazes around her and greeted Yi Zhao with a smile. Clan leader Yi Zhao. Yi Zhao's eyes were fixed on Dumpling. Her emotions were in turmoil. Because she was still young, Dumpling looked like a doll when she transformed into human form. The entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had transformed into human form after reaching 100 years old. At the very least, they looked like they were in their teens. She was the first one as young as Dumpling. It was no wonder that everyone was so shocked. "Dumpling?" Yi Zhao spoke carefully. His voice was unusually gentle, as if he was afraid of scaring Dumpling. Dumpling heard him and lifted her head from Chu Liuyue's shoulder to look back. She tilted her head and blinked her large, grape-like eyes. Yi Zhao felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He waved his hand and his expression became even gentler. There was even a hint of undetectable adoration. "Dumpling, come here." Dumpling snorted and hugged Chu Liyue again. She didn't want to go over. She only wanted to be with Ah Yu. After being rejected by Dumpling in public, Yi Zhao felt awkward. However, there wasn't a hint of anger on his face. He only rubbed his hands together helplessly, as if he didn't know how to deal with this situation. Chu Liyue laughed in her heart and patted Dumpling's back gently. "Dumpling." No matter what, she was still the clan leader of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. "You're not giving her any face." Dumpling glanced at Chu Liyue and pouted. However, she couldn't change her mind. She jumped down from her arms and took a few steps forward. As she moved, the bells on her 2 round hair buns jingled. The hem of her lotus leaf dress swayed. Her white and chubby feet were faintly discernible. It was very cute. She walked to Yi Zhao and stood in front of him. She couldn't help but look back at Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue raised her chin. Dumpling crossed her hands in front of her and bowed obediently. Dumpling greets the clan leader. She was very small and round. When she bowed so seriously, she looked even more charmingly naive. Yi Zhao quickly took a step forward and reached out to help her. "Hey. Hey. Okay. Get up quickly." Before his hand could reach her, Dumpling had already straightened up quickly. Her movements were smooth and natural. Yi Zhao's hand froze in midair. He smiled embarrassedly and retracted his hand. "That. Dumpling, you," he paused hesitantly, as if he didn't know what to say. The scene fell into an awkward silence. Chu Liyue looked at this scene and raised her eyebrows slowly. Clan leader Yi Zhao is actually a little afraid of Dumpling losing her temper. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1593. That was really strange. One had to know that the leader of the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix clan was very unyielding and arrogant. Not to mention the humans, even the elders and juniors around him were as obedient as quails in front of him. She could be considered to have interacted with him before. To put it nicely, he was a man of his word and extremely proud. To put it bluntly, he was very self-centered and prideful. However, such a person was humiliated in front of Dumpling, yet, he wasn't angry. Not only was he not angry, but he even seemed to be thinking about how to make Dumpling happy. Chu Liyue sized up Yi Zhao without batting an eyelid. When he saw his hands clenched together nervously and the stiff smile on his face, he almost laughed out loud. Then, Yi Zhao held it in for a long time before he finally opened his mouth. However, just as he said a word, Dumpling said in a crisp voice. "Since there's nothing else, I'll go back first, clan leader." Yi Zhao's remaining words were stuck in his throat. Everyone held their breaths. This Dumpling was too arrogant. The last person who dared to be so rude to the clan leader had long been reduced to ashes. She probably couldn't avoid being punished. However, just when everyone was waiting to see how Yi Zhao would punish Tuanzi, he coughed and said slowly, "I'm sorry." Then you can go, thank you, clan leader." Dumpling thanked him, hurriedly turned around, and ran back to Chu Liyue's side. Everyone was dumbfounded. Just like that? The clan leader didn't intend to punish her at all? Yi Zhao, however, was thinking about something else. When Dumpling faced him just now, her little face was cold. However, as soon as she turned around, the corners of her mouth were already blooming with a big smile. Needless to say, that smile was only directed at Sheng Guanyu. Looking at the bouncing little figure, Yi Zhao felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. Logically speaking, since Dumpling had taken human form and had already opened her 4th meridian, her feelings for her race should be even deeper. But, from the way she acted just now, it was obvious that she was still brooding over the previous incident. At this moment, he felt a little regretful. The way he treated Shangguan Yu and Dumpling back then seemed to have been a little too forceful. If they had sat down and talked things over from the start, Dumpling would not have been so against them. However, it was already too late to realize this now. "Ah, you." Dumpling ran back and grabbed Chu Liuyue's hand. Chu Liyue held her soft and chubby hand, but her eyes were still on Yi Zhao as she smiled and said, "Don't worry. Clan leader Yi Zhao, the bet counts as my win, right?" Yi Zhao snapped out of his daze and looked at her with a complicated gaze. Even if he did not want to admit it, he knew that it was the truth. The woman in front of him had indeed helped Dumpling take human form within a month. She had even helped Dumpling open her fourth meridian. Everyone had witnessed it. It was absolutely true. She had to admit what she had done no matter what. Seeing Dumpling leaning on him, Yi Zhao could not help but let out a long sigh. "You win. I'm willing to accept my loss. There's no need to cancel the contract between you and Dumpling. If it wants to follow you in the future, then, it's up to her." Yi Zhao said word by word. His voice seemed to be even lower than usual. And this sentence was like a clap of thunder, exploding in everyone's ears. Almost instantly, everyone widened their eyes in shock and looked at Yi Zhao in disbelief. Apart from Yi Zhao and the 5 elders, the rest of the people didn't know about this bet. So when they heard it, their reaction was naturally huge. Didn't the clan leader hate humans to the core? Now, he actually agreed to let Dumpling follow Shangguan Yu in the future, and there was no need to cancel the contract. This, only Elder Yi Gong seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes lit up. Clan leader, when Elder Yi Shang heard this, he could not help but speak up. He frowned slightly and felt a little worried. How could this matter be settled just like that? Dumpling had the purest bloodline, and she had even opened her 4th meridian today. With such talent, she was destined to be the best choice for the young master. If she still maintained the contract with Shangguan Yu, how could she take the position of the young master? When they made the bet, they did not expect the purest bloodline to be so powerful. On the other hand, they did not expect Shangguan Yu to be able to do it. But now, Dumpling had successfully taken human form and opened her 4th meridian. It could be said that there was no one in the younger generation who could compare to her. But she had to continue following Shangguan Yu. To them, this was truly too great of a loss. Yi Zhao frowned slightly, and his eyes darkened. "Our clan always keeps our promises. We will never go back on our words. Clan leader is right." After being silent for a long time, Elder Yi Gong suddenly spoke up. This bet was personally proposed by the clan leader. If we were to break the bet just because the other party won, it would be too embarrassing. If this matter spreads, where will our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's face go? Elder Yi Shang looked at him coldly. Did he see hope and come out to jump around again? As expected, he did not give up. Elder Yi Gong did not care about his disdain. He was in a good mood now. When he saw that Dumpling had successfully opened her 4th meridian, he thought that the position of the young master would be hers. But when Shangguan Yu mentioned the bet, he remembered that it was because Dumpling had succeeded that she did not have the right to take the young master's position. The previous worry and despair was a waste of emotions. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan would never accept a bloodline that had contracted with a human to be the young master. Thinking of this, Yi Gong's gaze turned slightly and looked at Iran. A trace of disappointment and contempt flashed across his eyes. Mud could not support a wall. He had spent so many years nurturing him, but in the end, he was inexperienced. From now on, Iran was basically useless. It seemed that he had to find someone better. However, the most important thing now was to postpone the selection of the young master. Clan leader, too many things have happened today. I think we should postpone the selection of the young master for the time being. Why don't we wait for a period of time, when everyone has calmed down and is ready? Or, we can just wait for the next ancestral worship ceremony, Elder Yi Shang said in a deep voice. The ancestral worship ceremony is held once every 100 years. Moreover, everyone in the clan has put in a lot of effort for today's young master selection. How can we postpone it just like that? Elder Yi Gong smiled in an unconcerned manner. What else can we do? In the current situation, Shang, do you think we can continue? There's no need to continue. Yi Zhao suddenly spoke and interrupted the argument between the two. Elder Yi Gong's lips curled slightly. Clan leader is wise. However, Yi Zhao's next sentence made his proud and complacent expression instantly freeze on his face. Because I already have the best candidate. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1594. Yi Zhao raised his eyes slightly and looked at Dumpling. Sensing his gaze, everyone was stunned for a moment. Elder Yi Gong felt a strong sense of uneasiness in his heart. Clan leader, Yi Zhao ignored him and continued. Although Dumpling is still young, she has a pure bloodline. Moreover, she has already taken human form and opened her fourth meridian. She is fully deserving of the position of young master. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire square fell into dead silence. Even Chu Luyue could not hide her shock as she raised her head and looked at Yi Zhao. He actually appointed Dumpling as the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Is this really not a joke? Actually, it was not that Chu Luyue had not thought about this. To be fair, the bloodline and talent that Dumpling had displayed could definitely crush all the competitors present. However, even if others did not say it, Chu Luyue herself understood that Dumpling had a contract with her, so the position of young master was like the moon in the water, a flower in the mirror. If she were the clan leader of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, she would also directly kick Dumpling out of the candidates. However, she did not expect Yi Zhao to make such a shocking choice. Isn't he worried that he will be ridiculed by the world? Isn't he worried that I will instigate Dumpling to do something that is not beneficial to the clan? There's more. His actions will definitely bring more problems than that. However, his expression was calm, as if he did not hesitate at all. Dumpling grabbed her hand and blinked, as if she did not understand what was going on. Seeing that the atmosphere around her was a little strange, she did not care much and touched her bun in boredom. She was not interested in the position of young master. She just wanted to be with Yu. When can I leave? Sensing Dumpling's thoughts, Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. Leave? I'm afraid I won't be able to leave today. Patriarch, this matter concerns the selection of the young master. You must reconsider. Elder Yi Gong took a deep breath and calmed himself down with great difficulty. However, his anxious expression and tone revealed that he was not as calm as he appeared to be. Dumpling's talent is not bad, but don't forget that she has a contract with a human. If that's the case, how can he take on the great responsibility of being the young lord? Wouldn't that mean that their entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan would become Shangguanyu's slaves? He absolutely could not agree to this. Even Elder Yi Shang, who had always stood on the opposite side of Elder Yi Gong, frowned. After thinking for a long time, he spoke. Great Elder's words are not without reason. Patriarch, this is a matter of great importance. Why don't you reconsider? However, Yi Zhao was very determined. He glanced at the two of them. The so-called young master is the most outstanding one selected from the younger generation. Don't tell me you have a more suitable candidate than Dumpling. If you can find someone more powerful than her today, I will change my mind. Everyone was speechless. What else could they do? Even Iran couldn't compete with Tuanzi, not to mention the rest. Pure bloodline, how many years did it take for one to appear? How could they compare? But Patriarch, as the young master, you have to shoulder a heavy responsibility. Dumpling. She can come and go as she pleases in the clan and do whatever she wants. She can even be promoted to an elder when she opens her 6th meridian in the future. However, the position of young master, she's really not suitable," Elder Ishang said earnestly. Of course, he also liked Dumpling. After so many years, this was the first time he saw a pure bloodline with his own eyes. In the short period of 1 month, Tuanzi's talent and strength were far beyond their initial expectations. It was indeed a great blessing for the clan to have a pure bloodline descending. However, she had formed a contract with Sheng Guanyu. If she really became the young master and became the patriarch in the future, there would always be a Sheng Guanyu beside her. What would that be like? Elder Yi Gong took a step forward and argued. Patriarch, there are many outstanding juniors in the clan. Perhaps no one can compare to her today, but it doesn't mean that there won't be anyone in the future. It's too rash of you to choose her as the young master. In any case, he had already embarrassed himself today and offended the patriarch more than once. In that case, one more time wouldn't make a difference. No matter what, he could not let the position of young master be taken away today. Yi Zhao narrowed his eyes. The remaining 2 elders could not help but speak up to dissuade him. What they said was almost the same, and they were all against it. Only Elder Yu stood at the side with his arms crossed, as if he was thinking about something. Although the others in the square did not speak, their expressions were clear. Of course, they were unwilling to agree. Even if they chose someone who was not that powerful, they did not want someone who had formed a contract with a human to be the young master. The huge square fell into a stalemate. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and glanced at Dumpling. Dumpling sensed her gaze and looked up as well. Dumpling, do you want to be the young master? Chu Luiyue asked in her heart. Dumpling paused in the act of fiddling with her hair and looked at her blankly. If I become the young master, can I still be with Ayu? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips and looked at her eyes that were as clear as black grapes. She did not know how to answer. Dumpling, on the other hand, was thinking. She vaguely understood some of it just now. These people refused to let her be the young master because she had formed a contract with Ayu. If she wanted to be the young master, she would have to break the contract. Then what was there to be? Dumpling shook her head. I didn't do it properly. Chu Luiyue sighed in her heart. Then, you still have to participate in the ancestral worship ceremony according to the procedures. I saw that they all went to take the test. Why don't you go too? When things here are over, we'll leave, okay? Digression, 60 clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1595. She insisted on bringing Dumpling back because she wanted her to acknowledge her ancestors and have a home in the future. Although it was still unknown whether this place could be called a home, she still had to acknowledge her ancestors. Otherwise, wouldn't this trip be a waste? Oh, okay. When Dumpling heard that she could leave, she was instantly overjoyed. It didn't matter if she went through the process. Anyway, it would be best if she could leave in the end. Chu Luiyue patted her head and looked at the few people who were still in a stalemate. Clan leader Yi Zhao, thank you for your kindness. It's just that Dumpling is still young, and she should be following me for a long time. I'm afraid that she won't be able to bear the position of young master. You should take back your order. Countless pairs of eyes fell on her with complicated emotions. Actually, other than Dumpling, the one who benefited the most from this matter was Sheng Guanyu. She was the owner of Tuanzi's contract. If Tuanzi really became the young master, her status would naturally rise as well. Not to mention, Dumpling would become the clan leader in the future. When that time came, she would be able to do whatever she wanted in Phoenix Mountain. Everyone listened to Dumpling, and Dumpling was extremely loyal to her. It was almost equivalent to the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan becoming her powerful backing. Sheng Guanyu would definitely understand this. However, she still rejected it so straightforwardly. Yi Zhao frowned slightly as he looked at her. The feelings in his heart quietly changed. This Sheng Guanyu was indeed different from the rest of the humans. With such a huge temptation in front of them, How many people in the world could reject it? Based on how dependent and intimate Dumpling was with her, as long as she let Dumpling fight for it, Dumpling would definitely agree without hesitation. However, she didn't do that. Instead, she rejected it on behalf of Dumpling. The depths of her black jade-like eyes were clear. It was clean and clear, without the slightest bit of falsehood or reluctance. She really didn't seem to care about these things. Yi Zhao calmed down. Dumpling thinks so too. Chu Luiyue smiled and looked down at Dumpling. Dumpling raised her head and said in a clear voice, "What's so good about being a young lord? I want to follow you." Her expression was pure and unrestrained. It could be seen that every word she said came from her heart. Chu Luiyue was touched and gently exhaled. In fact, Dumpling looked young, but in fact, she had been with her for many years. There were many things that she knew. However, she still made this choice without hesitation. How could she not be moved? Fortunately, the matter here should be resolved soon. When the time came, she would leave with Dumpling. In the future, he would be able to relax. Everyone had different expressions when they heard Dumpling's words. Many people secretly exchanged glances. Some felt that it was a pity, some looked down on it, some mocked it, and some disapproved. Without a doubt, in their eyes, Dumpling voluntarily gave up the position of young lord in order to continue being with Sheng Guanyu. It was too stupid. So many people yearned for it, but she abandoned it like a worn-out shoe. She was really incurable. Elder Yi Gong suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. Clan leader, Dumpling said so herself. Do you still insist? Elder Yi Shang looked deeply at Chu Luiyue. He didn't know what kind of ability this woman had to make Dumpling follow her so willingly. She even gave up such a precious opportunity. It was a pity that the purest bloodline couldn't become the young lord. Yi Zhao was silent for a long time before he finally said, "Since you don't want to, it's up to you." These words were naturally directed at Dumpling. Many people felt conflicted when they heard this. The clan leader really liked Dumpling. He even said such words. He couldn't wait to offer the position of young lord to her with both hands. However, Dumpling only said that she didn't want it and didn't give him any face at all. He actually didn't get angry. In the end, he just regretfully put away his thoughts. If it were anyone else present, who would receive half the treatment? However, there were some who were more open-minded. After all, the purest bloodline was different. They couldn't compare to Dumpling in the first place, so it was normal for the clan leader to be biased. Weren't they especially tolerant of Iran in the past? It was just that Dumpling had a contract with the human race. Clan leader Yi Zhao, you know best why I brought Dumpling back this time. Since the bet has been completed, then. I also hope that Dumpling can successfully participate in the ancestral worship ceremony and officially return to the clan. Chu Luiyue stated her request simply. Yi Zhao didn't object. Although she couldn't become the young lord, Dumpling had the purest bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, which was rare in 1,000 years. No matter what, she should return. I have the same intention. Yi Zhao hid the regret in his heart and raised his finger to point at the totem in the middle of the square. Dumpling, everyone in front is almost done with the test. You can go directly. In fact, everyone had seen Dumpling open her fourth meridian with their own eyes. This test was indeed just a formality. Seeing that the clan leader was going to drop the matter, many people secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The atmosphere finally became less tense. Dumpling didn't care about that and walked over with her short legs. A pair of white bare feet stepped directly on the totem. Then she lowered her head to take a look. Yi Zhao reminded her. Just inject the flame in your body directly into it. From the looks of it, he couldn't wait to personally guide her. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but lower her head and almost burst out laughing. If it was a month ago, she would never have thought that this cold-hearted clan leader would actually be like this. No matter what, he clearly treated Dumpling as a big treasure. It was a kind of holding in the hand afraid of dropping, holding in the mouth afraid of melting feeling. Thinking back to how strict he was towards her and Dumpling when they first arrived, it was a stark contrast to now. Fortunately, Dumpling was going to leave with her after the ancestral worship ceremony. If she really stayed here in the future, how much would clan leader Yi Zhao spoil her? Chu Luiyue felt tired for everyone present just thinking about it. Dumpling was very smart and understood at once. She raised her meaty little hand. Boom! A ball of reddish gold flames suddenly appeared. The surrounding temperature also rose at this moment. Quite a few people revealed looks of astonishment. The flame of the purest bloodline seemed to be even purer and hotter than theirs. Whoosh! With a slight sound, the first flame on the totem was instantly ignited. Elder Yishang's expression changed slightly. So fast. This totem's reaction seemed to be much more sensitive than the ones tested previously. As soon as he finished speaking, the second flame was ignited. And then the third. The surrounding noises gradually disappeared, and everyone's gaze was unconsciously attracted to that direction. When Chu Luiyue looked up, she saw the fourth flame ignite with a whoosh. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1596. Chu Luiyue was also shocked. She thought that the test would take a long time, but she didn't expect it to be so fast. She lowered her head and held back her laughter, and it was over just like that. Looking at the four burning flames, Chu Luiyue fell into deep thought. Did I take this too seriously just now? To Dumpling, it seems like it's just a piece of cake. Dumpling also seemed a little surprised. She lowered her head and stared at the flames on the totem. She stretched out her small hand and counted seriously. 1, 2, 3, 4. After counting, she retracted her hand. It seems to be over. She raised her head and glanced at Yi Zhao. Clan leader, can I leave now? Yi Zhao was stunned. What? Oh, you. The test is over, and you've officially returned to the clan. If you want to leave, that's not a problem. Although he was very reluctant, he had already said those words before, so of course, he couldn't go back on his words. Dumpling smiled in satisfaction. With a thought, the flames on her small hand quickly disappeared. She turned around and ran towards Chu Luiyue. Ah, you, bang. Before Dumpling could run 2 steps, she suddenly bumped into a transparent barrier that suddenly appeared. She didn't notice and bumped into it. Ouch! Dumpling fell on her butt and sat on the ground. She wrinkled her little face and rubbed her nose subconsciously. Ouch, it hurts. Dumpling. Chu Luiyue was also shocked. She quickly went forward and wanted to bring Dumpling back. However, when he took a closer look, he saw that Tuanzi had been enveloped by a semi-spherical transparent enchantment, and she was trapped inside and couldn't get out. This sudden turn of events caused everyone else present to be abruptly stunned. Looking at Dumpling sitting pitifully on the ground, Chu Luiyue's heart ached. She immediately wanted to go over. However, when she was about 10 steps away from the barrier, she could already feel an indescribably powerful pressure descending upon her. Her heart skipped a beat. This was coming from the barrier. With her current strength, it would be difficult to go over. Chu Luiyue frowned and looked at Yi Zhao. Clan leader Yi Zhao, what's going on? However, Yi Zhao's expression was very strange. He didn't answer Chu Luiyue's question as he stared at the transparent barrier that suddenly appeared in shock. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Chu Luiyue suddenly realized that something was amiss. To be able to make Yi Zhao reveal such an expression. This matter was probably not simple. She almost subconsciously looked at the few elders beside her. Sure enough, she saw that their expressions were almost exactly the same as Yi Zhao's. It was as if they had seen an unbelievable scene. In the midst of shock, there was an indescribable excitement and agitation. Excitement? Agitation? What's the buzz? Before Chu Luiyue could figure it out, she heard a buzzing sound coming from the barrier. She immediately turned her head to look. She saw that at the top of the transparent barrier, a reddish-gold flowing light suddenly flew out. The flowing light scattered and quickly outlined a strange picture on the barrier. The surrounding sounds all disappeared at this moment. An indescribable heavy pressure poured out from the barrier again. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a buzzing sound in her ears. It was as if there was a strange sound coming from a distant time and space. She couldn't help but frown. She circulated the force in her body, trying to isolate the sound. However, she soon realized that it was useless. The sound was faintly discernible. It was as if someone was chanting in a low voice. It was light and heavy, loud and deep. It made people subconsciously submit to it. Chu Luiyue inadvertently looked to the side and was suddenly stunned. Because at this moment, everyone in the square was looking at the transparent barrier with a dignified and respectful expression. Their eyes were full of undisguised deep respect and admiration. Then, she heard Yi Zhao's voice. "Welcome, ancestor's spirit." His voice was always deep and powerful. However, at this moment, it was full of respect and even trembling slightly. Chu Luiyue glanced over. Yi Zhao actually placed a hand on his chest and bowed his head respectfully. As for the 5 elders beside him, they all knelt down in unison. "Welcome, ancestor's spirit." Following their movements, in the huge square, except for Yi Zhao and Chu Luiyue, the rest of the people actually knelt down. "Welcome, ancestor's spirit." Their voices were uniform and could not hide their excitement. Chu Luiyue sucked in a breath of cold air. What are they doing? The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was an ancient divine beast and had always been extremely arrogant. Usually, when they spoke, they would almost always raise their chins. However, at this moment, they actually knelt down in unison. Chu Luiyue quickly looked at the transparent barrier again. This time, she finally saw the red and gold flowing light clearly. It clearly formed a huge Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's totem. The flowing light was resplendent and dazzling. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, but did not know what to say. She vaguely guessed something in her heart, but she was not too sure. Dumpling, who was trapped in the barrier, finally realized that something was wrong. She stopped rubbing her nose and looked up. She tilted her head slightly. Her grape-like big eyes were filled with doubt. Didn't they say that it was just a test? The test is already over. Why aren't they letting me go? However, this aura is very familiar. Dumpling wrinkled her nose and stood up. She bit her finger and stared at the totem above her head for a long time. Then, the totem floated down from the transparent barrier. The closer it got, the smaller it became. Finally, it landed in between Dumpling's eyebrows. Digression: there will be a midnight snack at 9 o'clock. Please check your mobile phone users. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1597. On Dumpling's smooth and fair forehead, a red and gold totem the size of a fingernail appeared. The golden light was dazzling and dazzling. It made her chubby and fair face look even more exquisite and cute. Although Dumpling's entire body was round and smooth, she was actually born very well, especially her facial features, which were very beautiful. When she grew up a little, she would definitely be a cute little person with picturesque features. Now that there was a golden patch between her eyebrows, it added a bit of nobility to her. If before, everyone's first reaction when they saw Dumpling was cuteness and fondness, and they wanted to walk over and rub her little face, then when they saw her now, they definitely wouldn't have such thoughts again. Of course, they still liked her, but before that, there was an extra bit of nobility, which made people unconsciously feel reverence. Dumpling raised her hand and touched the space between her eyebrows. It was hot and a little hot, but her entire body felt like it was soaking in a hot spring, and it was very comfortable. She thought for a moment, then reached out her hand and gently tapped forward. The transparent enchantment, which had been full of amazing pressure, suddenly dissipated silently and turned into starry lights. They drew an arc in the air and finally all poured into Tuanzi's body. The lotus leaf dress on her body seemed to shine even brighter. Dumpling smiled happily and ran towards Chu Luiyue. This time, there was no barrier to stop her, and she quickly rushed to Chu Luiyue. "Ah, you." She threw herself onto Chu Luiyue's lap, raised her little face, and said excitedly, "Ah, you. Look. My dress seems to have become prettier." Chu Luiyue, everyone, you summoned the spirit of your ancestor and fused with the totem of your clan, and this is the first thing you thought of. Chu Luiyue resisted the urge to hold his forehead and leaned over to look at Dumpling. The two of them looked at each other. "Dumpling." Chu Luiyue reached out and pointed at her forehead. "What is this?" Dumpling shook her head. "I don't know. It flew over by itself." As she spoke, she touched it again. "I don't think I can remove it." Everyone was speechless. Too much. This was too much. What kind of glory was this? If it were anyone else, they would have been moved to tears, but only you. He actually wanted to get rid of it. Some people were so emotional that they started to roll their eyes. There were also some who gritted their teeth and secretly hated themselves for not having such luck. In short, the atmosphere became very strange. "That's the soul of our ancestor." Yi Zhao took a deep breath and calmed down a lot. Finally, he spoke in a deep voice. Chu Luiyue looked up at him blankly. "The soul of the ancestors?" "That was, all those years ago, when our ancestor perished and sacrificed himself to the heavens, he left behind a strand of his soul, and it's the ultimate treasure of our clan. Over the years, it has only been summoned by the successive patriarchs when they were in power." Yi Zhao looked at Dumpling with a complicated expression. "But, today's situation has never happened before. This time, not only did the soul of the ancestors appear, but it also landed directly in between Dumpling's eyebrows and became her totem. What did this mean?" It went without saying. Chu Luiyue was also shocked. In that case, the sudden appearance of the reddish gold totem was even more powerful than she had expected. Yi Zhao said that it would only be summoned by the successive patriarchs when they were in power. Then Dumpling, more importantly, that thing was still stuck to Dumpling's body. What should she do? Even Chu Luiyue, who had a strong heart, was a little confused at this moment. This should have already exceeded the scope of discussion for the position of the young master. Yi Zhao paused and finally said, "This is a very important matter." "This is an important matter. Come with me." Just like that, the ancestral worship ceremony was forcefully interrupted halfway through. In the square outside the Phoenix Temple, everyone had gathered together and were discussing something in groups of 3 to 5. Their eyes, without exception, were all looking at the Phoenix Temple in front of them. The doors were tightly shut and the atmosphere was heavy. It's already been 15 minutes. I wonder what's the situation inside. What else can it be? Pure bloodline, continuous meridian opening. Now, even the soul of the ancestors has been summoned by her. What else is there to say? In any case, I'm convinced. That's precisely why things are so troublesome. If the soul of the ancestors hadn't appeared, they could have left if they wanted to. But it's different now. Even if they wanted to leave, the patriarch and elders wouldn't agree, right? This time, how can the patriarch and elders have the right to speak? The soul of the ancestors has been summoned and has even merged directly into Dumpling's body. This only proves that this is the will of the ancestors. How can the patriarch and the rest dare to disobey? Many people fell silent when they heard this. No matter what they thought, it was the truth. The soul of the ancestors symbolized the highest status of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. After today's incident, Dumpling's identity became sensitive. This was equivalent to being appointed by the ancestors. Who would dare to say no? But the most troublesome thing was that she still had a contract with Shengguanyu. No one knew what the outcome would be after today. Inside the Phoenix Temple, it was quiet and solemn. The same place, the same people. For a moment, Chu Luiyue's mind flashed back to the first time she and Dumpling entered the temple. At that time, they were like fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. If she wanted to talk to them as equals, she had to threaten them with death. However, in just a month, the situation had completely reversed. Now, the ones who had the upper hand were her and Dumpling. Yi Zhao and the rest were silent for a long time, as if they didn't know what to say. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything and just waited quietly. After all, she wasn't the one who was anxious. The most relaxed person was Dumpling. After the totem landed on Chu Luiyue's glabella, it quickly disappeared. Chu Luiyue did not continue to pay attention to it and just obediently nestled in Chu Luiyue's arms. She hugged Chu Luiyue's neck and leaned against her intimately, rubbing against Chu Luiyue's face from time to time. After a while, Dumpling finally couldn't help but say, "Ah, I'm so sleepy." She rubbed her eyes and mumbled coquettishly, "When are we leaving?" As she spoke, she even snuggled into Chu Luiyue's arms. Let's go, let's go. Let's go home." When Yi Zhao and the others saw this scene, their expressions changed rapidly, and their expressions were brilliant. When they thought about how the ancestor's spirit was in Dumpling's body and how she was acting coquettishly in the arms of a human, these big shots who had lived for thousands of years and had seen countless storms suddenly felt their hearts palpitate. Yi Zhao suppressed the countless emotions in his heart, took a deep breath, and looked at Chu Luiyue. "State your conditions." Chu Luiyue was stunned. "What?" Yi Zhao said, "Since Dumpling has been appointed by the ancestor, from today onwards, she will be the young master of our clan. When she reaches adulthood, she will automatically inherit the position of the clan leader. In the future, you will also be an honored guest of our clan. If you have any requests, we will try our best to satisfy them. But, please break the contract with Dumpling." Digression: I see that other people are starting to update their cloaks. Let's start to update them from today onwards. We will try our best to update them in February as soon as possible. Of course, the previous cloaks are also included. Alright, see you tomorrow at 12 mobile users. Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1598. Chu Luiyue's face paled. Clan leader Yi Zhao, do you mean, the previous bed is not valid? Yi Zhao closed his eyes. If it weren't for this accident, he wouldn't want the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan to be known as untrustworthy. But this matter was really unsolvable. This is also not what we want. Yi Zhao said. Now that Dumpling has inherited the spirit of our ancestor, she is bound to become the young master of our clan. It is also reasonable for her to inherit the position of clan leader in the future. Under such circumstances, it is indeed very inappropriate for her to continue to maintain the contract with you. In fact, the key to this matter was still the spirit of their ancestor. Originally, it was Yi Zhao who first proposed to let Dumpling become the young master. At that time, he didn't force Chu Luiyue to terminate the contract with Dumpling. But the spirit of their ancestor appeared and merged with Dumpling's body. The whole matter had become different. If Dumpling continued to contract with her, wouldn't it be equivalent to their ancestor? This was something they couldn't accept no matter what. Yi Zhao stared at Chu Luiyue and said, "In fact, even if you terminate the contract, it won't affect the relationship between you and Dumpling, right? And from now on, except for her, the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan will be your helpers. These, you will definitely not lose." Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. Yi Zhao's words were not unreasonable. No matter how one looked at it, the compensation they gave had shown enough sincerity. After all, according to their usual temperament, they didn't even want to say a word more to the human race. Now that they were willing to make such a concession, it was indeed rare. In exchange for the help of the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan with Dumpling's contract, it had to be said that these conditions were indeed quite tempting. But for Chu Luiyue, these were not the most important things. She still cared about Dumpling. Dumpling had obtained the ancestral soul. This was both an honor and a responsibility. If she really insisted on having her own way and only let Dumpling stay by her side as a contracted mythological beast, was that really the best choice for Dumpling? The hall was completely silent. Chu Luiyue fell into deep thought. Yi Zhao and the others silently waited for her decision. Suddenly, a soft little hand waved in front of Chu Luiyue. "Ah, you." Dumpling looked at her nervously, her eyes full of worry and uneasiness. "You don't want Dumpling anymore?" Seeing her aggrieved and scared look, Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly softened. She smiled and patted Dumpling's head. "How could that be?" Dumpling pounced over and hugged her neck, burying her face in her shoulder. Her originally crisp and pleasant voice sounded muffled at this moment. "Ah, you, don't abandon Dumpling. Dumpling will be good." Worry, fear, and grievance seemed to surge up at this moment. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be clenched by something in an instant. She was about to say something when she suddenly felt that her shoulder was wet. Her movements suddenly stopped, and those words were stuck in her throat. No matter what, she couldn't say them. Dumpling's voice had a trace of imperceptible choking. "Ah, you has already abandoned Dumpling once. Dumpling doesn't want a second time." Chu Luiyue's heart instantly ached. Yes. How could she forget? Back then, in the Imperial Ancestral Hall of Tianling, she chose to abandon Dumpling and die alone. Later, with great difficulty, she finally found her in the Mystic Forest. Now, she was faced with such a choice again. Perhaps in her opinion, the situation and the original intention of these two times were completely different. But to Dumpling, she was the one who was abandoned. Chu Luiyue's eyes were slightly hot. She immediately took a deep breath, hugged Dumpling tightly, and kissed her cheek. "Don't worry, you will always like Dumpling. She will always be with Dumpling." Dumpling's small body trembled, and only then did she raise her face. Her small face was full of tears, and two crystal-clear teardrops hung on the thick and long eyelashes at the corner of her eyes. Her nose was red, and so were her eyes. She looked really pitiful. Really? She felt wronged and asked as if she didn't dare to be sure. Chu Luiyue smiled and wiped away the tears on her face. "Of course." As she spoke, she looked up at Yi Zhao and the others and said word by word, "Seniors, please forgive me. This request. I'm afraid I can't agree." The negotiation reached a stalemate again. Yi Zhao and the others saw Dumpling's reaction clearly. It wasn't that Shangguan Yu didn't want to terminate the contract, but that Dumpling didn't want to. She had been with Shangguan Yu for many years and had a deep relationship with them. It was indeed difficult for Dumpling to suddenly separate them like this. Elder Yu rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Patriarch, Tuanzi is still young and doesn't understand a lot of things. If we force her, I'm afraid it will only make her sad and create a gap between her and us. I think it's better to take this matter slowly." "Take it slowly? How can we take it slowly when it concerns the position of the future clan leader?" Elder Yi Gong immediately retorted. "Moreover, you said to take it slowly. How long are we going to wait?" Elder Yu raised his eyebrows. "What's the hurry, Grand Elder? I'm also thinking for Dumpling and the entire clan. For now, this is the best way, isn't it? Since both of us have difficulties, why don't we each take a step back in compromise? When Dumpling is older, she can make her own decision. Being able to inherit the ancestors' soul proves that she has received the ancestors' approval. I think Dumpling won't let us down in the future. What do you think, clan leader?" Elder Yi Gong was speechless. He really couldn't continue arguing when the other party mentioned the ancestor's soul. "Humph." He sneered and swung his sleeves. "In short, if this matter isn't handled well, our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan will be completely disgraced. Clan leader, please think twice before making a decision." Yi Zhao's face was expressionless. In fact, he was also very conflicted at this moment. Yu and Yi Gong's words weren't without reason. This matter, he opened his mouth and subconsciously glanced at Dumpling. Shangguan Yu was carefully wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes. Yi Zhao's heart seemed to have been smashed by something. He suddenly couldn't say the words that were about to come out of his mouth. After a long while, he finally held his breath, as if he had made some kind of decision, and said in a deep voice, "EU's suggestion is good. Things can't continue like this. Then, let's each take a step back. From today onwards, Dumpling will be our clan's young master. Shangguanyu, you can continue to maintain the contract with Dumpling, but if the clan needs Dumpling, you must let her come back. After she reaches adulthood, let her make a second choice. Just in case, Dumpling needs to leave a trace of her aura so that our clan can know her situation at any time." Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. "It's a deal. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network." Chapter 1599. Chu Luiyue did not hesitate at all and agreed very quickly. She knew that this was the biggest concession the other party could make. Although it was only until Dumpling reached adulthood, as an ancient divine beast who had inherited the spirit of her ancestor, this was already very rare. Chu Luiyue was not one to push her luck, so she naturally agreed. "Seniors, don't worry. Dumpling has been with me for many years, and we are as close as family. No matter what, I will protect her well," Chu Luiyue said seriously. Yi Zhao's expression softened a little. This Shangguanyu was quite smart. There were some things that he did not say in front of Dumpling, but Shangguanyu understood. To be able to reach this stage at such a young age, she was indeed extraordinary. Yi Gong was shocked. "Patriarch, then it's settled." Yi Zhao ignored him and walked out of the hall. "Dumpling, follow me." Chu Luiyue guessed something and put Dumpling down. Dumpling was a little reluctant at first, but after Chu Luiyue repeatedly assured her that she would be by his side, she finally relaxed and followed Yi Zhao. Elder Yi Shang was stunned for a moment, but he could only smile helplessly and follow them out. The other elders followed one after another. Chu Luiyue was the last to walk. Creak, the heavy and dignified door opened with a sound. Brilliant afterglow flooded in and lit up half of the Phoenix Shrine. With the sudden opening of the door, the originally noisy square suddenly quieted down. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the Phoenix Shrine. Curiosity, agitation, excitement, nervousness, all kinds of emotions surged in everyone's hearts. They all knew that since the door of the Phoenix Shrine opened, it meant that today's matter had finally come to an end. Countless pairs of eyes fell on Yi Zhao, who walked out first. His face was as solemn and indifferent as ever, and nothing could be seen from it. The atmosphere was tense, and many people's hearts were beating like drums. Then, the 5 elders walked out. The expressions of these people were also very complicated, especially Elder Yi Gong. His face was so gloomy that it seemed like it could drip water. Some people looked at each other. From the looks of it, could it be that the matter wasn't resolved smoothly? Meanwhile, another tiny figure walked out from the depths of the hall. The bells rang, and her skirt swayed. Everyone's heart tightened. Here it comes. Then, they saw Dumpling walk to the clan leader's side. Compared to Yi Zhao's tall figure, Dumpling looked especially petite and dainty. But she stood there, calm and composed, pure and sincere. Vaguely, there was even an indescribable air of nobility. Compared to Yi Zhao, who was full of dignity, he didn't lose much. Many people sighed inwardly. As expected of someone who had fused with the ancestral spirit. How could a child possess such an aura? Yi Zhao scanned the surroundings, his deep gaze sweeping across each and every one of them. There seemed to be a layer of invisible pressure shrouding over them. Everyone became even quieter. In the huge square, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Yi Zhao spoke in a deep voice. Dumpling was born with the purest bloodline. She has already taken human form and opened 4 meridians consecutively. She is indeed a role model for the younger generation. Moreover, she was appointed by the ancestral spirit and has fused with the ancestral spirit. She is the best candidate for the young clan leader. Therefore, from today onwards, Dumpling will be the young clan leader of our clan. When she reaches adulthood, she will succeed to the position of clan leader. He paused. Because she is still young, she will continue to cultivate and grow with Shangguanyu until she reaches adulthood. As these words fell, everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, one after another, the sound of cold air being sucked in could be heard. What did the clan leader mean? Tuanzi was the young master, and when she grew up, she would directly become the patriarch. But more importantly, she would continue to follow Shangguanyu until she reached adulthood? Didn't that mean that they had not broken the contract yet? How could this be? After a short moment of silence, there was an uproar in the square. Clan leader, I don't think this is appropriate. That's right. No matter what, we can't let someone with a bloodline contract with the human clan take on such a heavy responsibility, right? Dumpling is very talented, but for the position of the young clan leader, shouldn't we choose someone more suitable? Yi Zhao raised his eyelids. Why are you objecting so strongly? Do you have a better candidate, or do you want to go against the ancestral spirit's orders? This simple sentence successfully shut everyone's mouth. The ancestral spirit had already made his choice. Even the clan leader had no right to say anything, let alone them. Now that the ancestral spirit has fused with Dumpling's body, she breathes and shares the same fate as our clan. Naturally, she will carry out the heavy responsibility of reviving our clan seriously. Yi Zhao frowned as he spoke. Why are you still standing there in a daze? Someone reacted first and hurriedly said. Greetings, young clan leader. This instantly reminded the rest of the people, and they all bowed. Greetings, young clan leader. No matter what they thought, the matter was already set in stone and could not be changed. Since that was the case, the only thing they could do was to obey. Behind the crowd, Yi Ran looked at the small figure standing beside Yi Zhao from afar, and his ears buzzed. Finally, he could not hold on any longer and collapsed to the ground. Yi Zhao glanced over. He was the clan leader, and everything that happened in the square was under his control. Naturally, he knew what was going on over there, but he did not care. Clan leader, someone seems to have fainted over there. Dumpling suddenly said. After hearing Yi Zhao's words, she confirmed that she could continue to follow Chu Luiyue in the future. A huge rock in her heart was finally lifted, and her mood was much better. Although her eyes were still red, her small face was already blooming with an extremely brilliant smile, and her voice was very clear. Everyone instinctively turned around to look when they heard this. Only now did they notice that Yi Ran had actually fallen unconscious on the ground. Many people secretly exchanged glances, and they saw the shock in each other's eyes. They were so close, but they did not notice, so how did Dumpling know? Yi Zhao knew that Dumpling had fused with the ancestral spirit and was already different from ordinary people, so he was not too surprised and only turned to look at Yi Gong. Yi Gong, go and take him back. If he recuperates well, he might be able to recover sooner. Elder Yi Gong could only agree. Yes, however, just as he took a step, he heard Dumpling's voice again. He won't be able to recover. Elder Yi Gong suddenly turned around and frowned. You. Young clan leader, Yi Ran is at least a little older than you. How can you curse him like this? Dumpling blinked. I'm telling the truth. His third meridian is broken and can't be repaired. If you don't believe me, go and see for yourself. Elder Yi Gong did not think much of it at first, but when he heard the last sentence, his heart skipped a beat. He immediately turned around and hurried over. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1600. Everyone hurriedly opened up a path for him. Elder Yi Gong walked to Yi Ran's side, squatted down, and grabbed his wrist. A moment later, his expression changed drastically. He suddenly turned around to look at Dumpling. His face was filled with shock, and there was a trace of disbelief in his eyes. Yi Ran's third meridian was indeed broken. He was forcefully interrupted when he was opening his fourth meridian, and the backlash caused a certain amount of damage to his body. However, it was not as if there had never been a case of failure and backlash in the clan before, and no one's third meridian had been broken. Elder Igong only needed to think carefully before he could roughly guess what had happened. Perhaps it was because Iran was clearly agitated after failing to open his meridian, and his chi and blood went berserk. That's why, in that situation, he should have calmed down and sorted out the chaotic power in his body as soon as possible, and not continued to argue and resist so angrily. Unfortunately, in the end, Iran could only blame himself for this. Elder Igong gritted his teeth, the veins on his forehead bulged, and his temples throbbed. He was extremely angry and aggrieved. All these years, he had spent so much effort to nurture Iran. In the end, it was all for nothing. With his third meridian broken, Iran would basically become a cripple in the future. However, he did not even have the right or reason to blame others. Seeing this scene, what else did everyone not understand? It seemed that Iran really couldn't make it. Many people sighed inwardly. Back then, Iran was so proud and did not take any of his peers seriously. In the end, not only did he not become the young master, but he also became a cripple. In the future, it would be difficult for him to have a place in the entire clan. Yi Zhao lowered his head curiously and asked. Dumpling, how do you know all this? Many people pricked up their ears when they heard that. Tuanzi pouted her lips. Of course I saw it. Everyone, Yi Zhao's eyelids twitched violently. You saw it directly? One had to know that even he could not determine these things out of thin air. Dumpling, yes. Dumpling nodded disapprovingly. Since it was so obvious, it was only natural for him to see through it. After receiving her affirmative answer, everyone fell silent. The purest bloodline and the ancestral spirit are actually so heaven-defying. There were still some people who were dissatisfied with Dumpling, but now they all shrank back. The clan leader was right. They were indeed unable to compare with Dumpling. Yi Zhao took a deep breath. After that, he didn't continue speaking about this matter and changed the topic. Since you've already become our clan's young master, you should follow me to the Phoenix Shrine and formally pay your respects to our ancestors. Dumpling nodded as if she understood. Yi Zhao turned around and led Dumpling into the Phoenix Shrine once more. When he stepped through the door, he brushed past Yi Shang and the others who were waiting at the door. The few of them bowed in unison, but did not follow in. After entering the shrine, Yi Zhao's gaze fell on Chu Luiyue, who was standing behind the door. Chu Luiyue immediately understood what he meant. She straightened her back and smiled at Dumpling. Dumpling, follow the clan leader obediently. I'll wait for you outside. Dumpling nodded obediently. Chu Luiyue then slipped out. The door slowly closed. Dumpling's figure quickly disappeared. Miss Shangguan, there are chairs over there. Please wait over there. It will probably take some time for the young master to pay respects to our ancestors. The one who spoke was Elder Yi Shang, and his tone was very polite. Chu Luiyue curved her eyes. Thank you, but I'll just stand here. This place was closer to Dumpling. Although she knew that there should be layers of enchantments within the Phoenix Shrine, and such a short distance was meaningless, it was better for her to stay here. When Dumpling came out, she would be able to see her directly. Seeing her resolute attitude, Elder Yi Shang did not say anything more. He nodded, took a few steps back, and waited patiently at the side. The people in the plaza did not return. They all returned to their original positions. It seemed that they had to wait together. After all, Dumpling was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, who was selected only once every 1,000 years. Naturally, they had to wait here for the entire process to end. Elder Yi Yu said to Elder Yi Gong with a smile. Great Elder, we're here. Don't worry. Take Yi Ran back first. I'm afraid his body won't be able to hold on for long. Elder Yi Gong gritted his teeth in hatred. Unfortunately, he was completely defeated in this situation. He was powerless to fight back, so he could only grit his teeth and bear with it. He helped Yi Ran up and quickly left. Chu Luiyue only turned her head to take a glance, then quickly retracted her gaze. The other party was not at the same level, so there was nothing to be concerned about. On the other hand, Dumpling, since she had already fused with the ancestor's soul, this ancestor worship should be done quickly, right? Dumpling followed Yi Zhao into the Phoenix Shrine and walked towards the innermost part. It was very quiet all around. Dumpling looked around as she walked. The inside was actually not much different from the main hall outside. However, the deeper she went, the more she could feel the vast pressure. Finally, the two walked to the innermost part of the Phoenix Shrine. Looking at the door in front of her, which was much smaller but more awe-inspiring, Dumpling's eyes flashed. Yi Zhao stood in front of the door. According to the clan's rules, I can't go in with you. You can only go in by yourself. Dumpling nodded, stretched out her small hand, and pushed the door open. Lifting her foot, her figure quickly disappeared behind the door. The door closed again. Digression. Lazy Sister Flowery 180 ****** 920 Leaf a leisurely time Spicy Little Fairy quickly enter the group to contact the people around Pear Collar. Continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1601. The square outside the Phoenix Shrine was completely silent. Time passed slowly. The sun set and the starry night arrived. The lanterns in the Phoenix Shrine automatically lit up. The bright light caused the entire hall to be brightly lit, splendid and resplendent. The light from the windows elongated Chu Luoyue's shadow. Chu Luoyue looked up slightly. Only a few stars dotted the black night sky. It was quiet and serene. By rough calculation, Tuanzi had been in there for 6 hours, but she hadn't come out yet. Chu Luoyue vaguely understood Elder Yi Shang's words. It seemed that Dumpling's ancestral worship would take a lot of time. But it was normal when she thought about it. Dumpling had the purest bloodline and had merged with the ancestor's soul. It was expected that it would take a little longer. Chu Luoyue swept her gaze across the square without batting an eyelid. Then, she quietly retracted her gaze. She could clearly feel that some people were still looking at her with different expressions. But compared to the beginning, they were much more restrained. More of them were actually curious. Chu Luoyue didn't care much about it. She had always been a person who respected others tenfold. As long as they didn't take the initiative to find trouble with her, she was happy to coexist peacefully with them. After all, Dumpling was now the young lord. When she came of age, she would be qualified to inherit the position of clan leader. Even the 5 great elders would be slightly inferior to such a status. And as the owner of Tuanzi's contract, her status naturally rose as well. She thought about how her master and the others were worried when they were about to come more than a month ago. Who would have thought that things would turn out this way? That's right. Chu Luoyue's eyes suddenly flickered. She and Dumpling had been in there for so long, and Taizu was still waiting outside. He probably didn't know about everything that happened in the Phoenix Shrine. Who knew how worried he was now, Elder EU? Chu Luoyue took 2 steps to the side and said in a low voice. Elder EU could be considered as the person she was most familiar with here, and she trusted him quite a bit. Asking him for help was naturally the most appropriate choice. What happened? Elder EU was originally leaning against a pillar with his arms crossed, as if he was thinking about something. He was surprised to see Chu Luoyue. Chu Luoyue smiled and said, yes. Elder EU, may I trouble you with something? When Dumpling and I came here, Taizu was also with us. It's just that when we entered the Phoenix God Mountain, Taizu stayed there. You want to invite him in? Elder EU stroked his chin. I'm afraid this will be a little difficult. It was all thanks to Dumpling that she was able to enter Shangguanyu. As for the others, he definitely couldn't let them in so easily. You misunderstood. Chu Luoyue narrowed her eyes. I just want to ask you to help me pass on a message. As long as you can let Taizu know that Dumpling and I are fine now, it's fine. She and Taizu actually had a way to sense each other's presence. However, she could only know a rough idea at most. She couldn't know the specifics. If she could send a message out and let Taizu know that they were fine here, she would feel at ease. The main thing is, I don't know when Dumpling's matter will end, so, oh, you're talking about that? Simple. Elder EU was immediately amused when he heard that. I thought it was a big deal. Don't worry, leave it to me. As he spoke, he suddenly raised his hand. With a flash of light, a reddish gold feather appeared in his hand. He handed the feather to Chu Luiyue. If you have anything you want to say, just write it down with this thing. Oh right, remember to use fire when you write. Of course, ordinary humans wouldn't be able to use this thing. However, Chu Luiyue and Dumpling had a contract, so this was naturally not a problem. Chu Luiyue thanked him and took the feather with both hands. This was somewhat similar to the ancestor's golden feather that had appeared before, but its size and color couldn't be compared to this one. It should be Elder EU's own feather. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, then a reddish gold flame instantly rose from her palm. Then, she held the feather in her hand and wrote a few lines in the air. Flames flowed out from the tip of the feather where it moved, and then quickly disappeared. It's done. After Chu Luiyue finished writing, she handed the feather back. Elder EU took it with a smile. With a light wave of his wrist, the feather floated up and flew into the distance. Not long after, he disappeared into the thick night. He should receive your letter soon. Chu Luiyue's red lips curled up. Thank you. Yintian Tower. Back then, when the patriarch returned, he directly entered this place and didn't leave until he was discovered. A group of people stood in front of a hall. Rong Xiu stood at the very front, and Elder Yu Jingzuan stood behind him as he carefully explained. After discovering that the patriarch had fainted, I tried a few methods, but I couldn't wake him up. I hurriedly informed the other elders. After that, 36 revered Elder Ming rushed over first and invited the patriarch to the sacrificial god hall. As Elder Yu Jing spoke, his hands in his sleeves tightened. Actually, at that time, he was the first to inform Elder Tong Chuan. Unfortunately, 36 revered Elder Ming's reaction was extremely fast, and he actually rushed over before everyone else. He directly proposed to bring Bailey June to the sacrificial god hall. Naturally, no one dared to refute and agreed. After that, we also strengthened the defense of this place and ordered people to guard it strictly. We didn't dare to slack off in the slightest. Elder Yu Jing lowered his head and was very respectful and careful. After the previous confrontation, he didn't dare to speak to Rong Xiu face to face. In front of Rong Xiu, he always felt like he was being seen through. It was as if any thoughts he had, or even the slightest thought, would be seen through by him. This feeling was really not good, so he could only follow the principle of speaking less, making fewer mistakes. Other than the necessary words, he would try his best to become an invisible person at other times. Rong Xiu looked at the tightly shut door and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Other than you and 36 revered Elder Ming, who else has entered this place? Elder Yu Jing's gaze drifted. Elder Tong Chuan said, Your Highness, after 36 revered Elder Ming brought the patriarch away, this old man also entered this place to investigate carefully. Unfortunately, I didn't find any clues. Rong Xiu glanced at him. Elder Tong Chuan went in alone? Elder Tong Chuan hesitated for a moment. Elder Yu Jing also accompanied him. Rong Xiu's scarlet lips curled up slightly. They were all his people, so it wasn't that important whether they went in together or not. He turned his gaze, 36 revered Elder Ming, didn't you notice anything unusual at that time? 36 revered Elder Ming frowned and shook his head. At that time, he had indeed investigated seriously, but Rong Xiu nodded in understanding. He lifted his clothes and walked forward. Then I will go in and take a look myself. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1602. Esteemed elders, come in as well. As Rong Xiu spoke, he flicked his sleeves, and the door opened. He walked to the entrance before pausing. Then, he turned around and said with an impassive smile, "If any of you have any doubts, feel free to follow me." The crowd stared at one another, and the atmosphere turned a little awkward. Previously, in the ethereal hall, they were rendered speechless by Rong Xiu's rebuttal and questioning. After which, Rong Xiu proposed to take a look personally. Given the current situation, it was clear that he was still targeting them. Was there any doubt in his heart? Wasn't he mocking them for doubting and questioning him previously? 36 Esteemed Elder Ming took the lead and followed behind him. It's good for everyone to come in and take a look. Perhaps, we might have really missed something previously, and we can rely on everyone's help to find some clues. Esteemed Elder Tong Chuan's face darkened, and he quickly followed behind. After which, it was Esteemed Elder Yu Jing and the others. The various clan heads hesitated for a moment. Seeing Rong Xiu and the others gradually disappearing from sight, they felt a little uneasy. Eventually, they gritted their teeth and followed behind him. Bailey Jun was the clan head. Naturally, his residence was extravagant. Rong Xiu walked all the way to Bailey Jun's bedroom. Actually, at Bailey Jun's level, even if he didn't sleep for an entire month, it wouldn't affect him much. Thus, even though this was his bedroom, he spent most of his time cultivating here. Rong Xiu walked into the room, stood in his original spot, and sized up the room. The exterior was already extravagant, but the interior was even more so. After entering, a few of the clan heads couldn't help but gasp in astonishment. Other than Bailey Jun, no one was qualified to enter this place. It was inevitable that they would be shocked to see such a sight for the first time. Esteemed Elder Tong Chuan glared at the few of them in displeasure, and they immediately shut their mouths, not daring to utter a single word. However, at this moment, Rong Xiu suddenly chuckled. The Patriarch's room is very big, and there are 2 side halls beside it. Let's split up and search. Remember to search carefully. You don't have to restrain yourself just because this is the clan leader's bedroom. One had to know that finding clues and finding out the truth was the most important thing for the Patriarch. No one dared to disagree, and they all nodded. Yes, Holy Son. Elder Tong Chuan's lips moved, but he didn't say anything in the end. He just looked at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu stood in place for a while before walking forward. Just when everyone thought he was going to start looking for clues, he suddenly walked to a chair by the window and sat down. Everyone froze. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. You guys go about your business. No one dared to say anything and continued to search. Rong Xiu just sat there, unmoving like a mountain. There seemed to be a hint of leisure between his brows. After a while, he raised his eyes slightly and looked at Elder Tong Chuan and Elder Yu Jing. His lips curled into a faint smile. Why don't the 2 revered elders look for him? These words made the 2 of them choke. His tone was too condescending. He was simply treating them like slaves. It really made people unhappy. Elder Tong Chuan paused and asked in return. Your Highness, why don't you look for him personally? Rong Xiu replied with an "oh," and the smile on his face deepened. I have been dealing with a lot of things recently and am a little tired. I plan to rest first. Moreover, with all of you revered elders and the Patriarch around, I am very assured. Elder Tong Chuan felt his blood boil. Rong Xiu was really addicted to ordering them around. He gritted his teeth and quickly responded, then turned and walked in the other direction. Elder Yu Jing didn't dare to say anything and went in the other direction. Hence, the entire space became one where Rong Xiu sat down and rested while the others searched hard. This continued for about an hour before everyone finally stopped. Your Highness, we didn't find anything. Your Highness, we didn't find anything either. There doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. Everyone present was the most important person in the Yuntian Tower. Even after searching together, they still didn't find anything out of the ordinary. It seemed that the matter was still unsolved. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes and didn't say anything. He seemed to be deep in thought. Elder Tong Chuan walked over and cupped his hands. Your Highness, we did our best to search, but we didn't find anything. His tone returned to its usual indifference and arrogance. There was only a trace of undetectable mockery in his eyes. Search? Naturally, they couldn't find anything here. Rong Xiu had brought so many people here, but in the end, he was just busy. Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted just because he was the patriarch? This farce would only make the people below even more dissatisfied with him. On the surface, it seemed like Rong Xiu had a lot of power in Yuntianke, but in actual fact, he only had control over the soldiers that he brought out himself. The tribes below him seemed to be very respectful to him on the surface, but in reality, when Rong Xiu took over, he wasn't old enough. When he was old enough, he suddenly left for a few years. During this time, Tong Chuan had been in charge of reviewing the Yuntian Tower's memorials. Rong Xiu came back this time and took back his power less than a year ago. How much power did he have in his hands? It was still a question mark. Rong Xiu still didn't say anything. Elder Tong Chuan frowned impatiently. Your Highness? Roar! A roar suddenly came from afar. Then, a snow-white figure jumped in through the window. It was Xue Xue. Everyone was shocked by this sudden scene. When they saw Xue Xue's appearance, they were even more shocked. Xue Xue's body was stained with specks of blood, and its face was scratched by something. Its flesh and blood were twisted, and the smell of blood filled the air. They all knew that Rong Xiu's contracted beast was extremely strong. It rarely lost, let alone in such a sorry state. They didn't know what it had gone through, moreover, it seemed to be biting something in its mouth. Rong Xiu got up and patted Xue Xue's head. You've worked hard. Xue Xue shook its head and spat out the thing in its mouth. Clang! A wooden plaque fell to the ground. Elder Tong Chuan's expression changed dramatically. Digression, tonight at 9 o'clock, there will be a supper. Please check for mobile users. A better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1603. It was a black wooden tablet stained with mottled blood. It lay quietly on the ground, emitting a scarlet cold light. Some kind of pattern could be vaguely seen on it. Everyone present looked over with a blank expression. Why did Xue Xue suddenly bring this thing back at this time? Among the crowd, only respected Elder Tong Chuan's face was pale and ugly. His hands moved in his sleeves, but his feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, unable to move. This is, 36 respected Elder Ming took a step forward and took a look. Suddenly, his expression changed. This is the Black Demon Cave's wooden tablet? Wait. The grade of this wooden tablet doesn't seem to be low. Respected Elder has good eyesight. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Only the 8 Hall Masters of the Black Demon Cave have this wooden tablet. In the Black Demon Cave, the Hall Master's status was second only to their Demon Master. They were all powerful existences that could intimidate a region. When everyone heard this, they all revealed a look of shock. Hall Master? Hasn't the Black Demon Cave been hidden for many years? Why did they suddenly appear now? The higher the status of the people of the Black Demon Cave, the more they value the wooden tablet. A wooden tablet of such a grade is extremely difficult to find. I wonder where you got this piece from, 36 respected Elder Ming frowned. Could it be that Xue Xue had a conflict with one of the Hall Masters of the Black Demon Cave? It seemed that this wooden tablet was not easy to obtain. Even Xue Xue was injured. Xue Xue exhaled and looked at respected Elder Tong Chuan. Her icy blue eyes were as sharp as ice blades. It was as if she wanted to peel off a layer of his skin. Respected Elder Tong Chuan's heart sank. When he saw Dumpling return with the wooden tablet, he already knew that something bad would happen. He just held on to the last glimmer of hope that they did not notice. But now, it seemed that it was impossible. Sensing Dumpling's gaze, everyone was puzzled at first. Then, their expressions became strange. It was not right for Dumpling to target respected Elder Tong Chuan. And respected Elder Tong Chuan's reaction was even more wrong. Rong Xiu raised his chin and said indifferently, "Respected Elder Tong Chuan, aren't you going to claim this item?" As soon as he finished speaking, the originally quiet room became even more deathly still. Although they had expected that something was wrong, many people still widened their eyes in shock when they heard the hidden meaning in Rong Xiu's words. Isn't this the wooden token of the Hall Master of the Black Demon Cave? How could the Holy Sun be recognized by Elder Tong Chuan? This old man doesn't know what your highness means. Senior Tong Chuan clenched his fists in his old sleeves, trying his best to make his voice sound as calm as usual. However, his heart was beating crazily and his blood was gushing as if it was about to explode at any moment. Some time ago, I felt that the Yuntian Tower was a little dirty. After I left, I got Xue Xue to guard this place in secret. After such a long time, she has indeed gained something. Rong Xiu said slowly. His voice was slightly drawn out, and there was a hint of carelessness in it. However, a thread in respected Elder Tong Chuan's mind suddenly tightened. The slightest carelessness would cause it to snap. Respected Elder Tong Chuan, this wooden token was indeed taken back by Xue Xue from someone. Now, that person is already dead. However, there is still a trace of aura left on this wooden token. It is obvious that the person who died was not the true owner of this wooden token. The most important thing is that the aura inside is very familiar to I. Why don't respected Elder Tong Chuan take a look personally? Do you also feel that, déjà vu? Respected Elder Tong Chuan's body stiffened. A chill suddenly surged up from the bottom of his feet. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly as if he was smiling. However, his deep phoenix eyes were like the coldest and sharpest sword, piercing straight into one's heart. If I am not wrong, this aura seems to be very similar to respected Elder Tong Chuan's aura. As soon as he finished speaking, the temperature in the room plummeted. As if it was frozen. At this moment, even the air seemed to have frozen. I wonder if respected Elder Tong Chuan has anything to say about this? There was no anger on Rong Xiu's face. His handsome and devilish face was calm. The corners of his eyes and brows carried the usual indifference and coldness. His brows were slightly raised and the corners of his mouth were slightly curled, adding a bit of indifference. Respected Elder Tong Chuan's lips moved. However, he felt that his throat was dry and tight. When he spoke, his voice was also inexplicably hoarse and tighter. This old man doesn't know. Oh right, there is something I almost forgot. Rong Xiu suddenly interrupted him and smiled. Previously, I said that I did not find out the reason why the clan leader is unconscious. However, when I saw this wooden token just now, I suddenly thought of something. The people of the Black Demon Cave are very strong. They can use some kind of seal to make people unconscious. This kind of seal is extremely sinister and vicious. Because other than being unconscious, there is nothing wrong with the sealed person's body. However, as time passes, the sealed person's strength will gradually dissipate. Their soul will also completely collapse after being tortured. At most a year, at least 3 months, the sealed person's soul will quietly be destroyed and they will completely die. Now that I think about it, the clan leader should be under this seal. Respected Elder Tong Chuan, what do you think? Respected Elder Tong Chuan's face could no longer be described as ugly. He looked at Rong Xiu in shock and absent-mindedness. It seemed that he did not expect him to say such a thing. How do you know? No. This old man does not understand what your highness just said. Respected Elder Tong Chuan tried to deny it. However, at this time, all his words sounded particularly weak. Respected Elder Tong Chuan wants to ask, how did I know about these top-secret spells of the Black Demon Cave? Rong Xiu chuckled. A few years ago, someone wanted to place this seal on I. Unfortunately, they did not succeed. However, these things. I knew about it from then on. Respected Elder Tong Chuan, do you want to know who that person is? Digression. Eat good night mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1604. The last trace of blood on revered Elder Tong Chuan's face completely faded. Everyone was shocked. 36 Revered Elder Ming frowned and took a step forward. Your Highness, I'm fine. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. I don't care about these tricks. 36 Revered Elder Ming pursed his lips. There was still a hint of self-blame and guilt between his brows. This old man is incompetent. I actually failed to sense the danger your highness was in. Although Rong Xiu had downplayed it, it was not difficult to imagine how powerful the seal was from his description just now. He could explain it in a few words, but anyone who thought about it would know that Rong Xiu must have experienced all kinds of difficulties and dangers back then. And he was completely unaware of all of this. Ever since Rong Xiu returned to the Yuntian Tower back then, 36 Revered Elder Ming had always taken good care of him and almost treated him as half a son. However, he did not expect that there would be such a huge mistake. As if guessing his thoughts, Rong Xiu's gaze became gentler. Speaking of which, this happened a few years ago when I had just left the Yuntian Tower. It's normal that you don't know about it, 36 Revered Elder Ming came to a realization. So that's how it is. At that time, Rong Xiu had just taken over. On the surface, the Yuntian Tower looked peaceful, but in reality, there were undercurrents. At that time, he stayed behind to take care of Rong Xiu and did not go out with Rong Xiu. After that, Rong Xiu kept in contact with him, so he stayed in the Yuntian Tower at ease and did not think too much about it. Who knew? There would be such a thing. Rong Xiu looked at Revered Elder Tong Chuan again and raised his eyebrows. His gaze was as if it was tangible, and it was filled with deterrence as it landed on Revered Elder Tong Chuan. Revered Elder Tong Chuan's eyelids twitched. Your Highness, are you suspecting that I was the one who attacked you back then? He suddenly sneered. Your Highness, this old man was born as a member of the Yuntian Tower. For hundreds of years, I have been loyal and devoted. Countless people in the Yuntian Tower can testify to this. You can say that this old man is arrogant and hot-tempered, but this is absolutely impossible. You are the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, and the person with the highest bloodline talent in the Yuntian Tower in the past 1,000 years. Why would this old man want to kill you? Or, did they use the methods of the Black Demon Cave? Elder Tong Chuan's expression was furious, as if he had suffered a great humiliation and grievance, and was extremely angry. You slandered this old man like this today. If you can't produce evidence, this old man will definitely not agree. His angry and agitated voice echoed throughout the room. The expressions of many people around him began to waver. To be honest, Elder Tong Chuan might not have been that respectful to the saint, and he might have even wanted to seize power for himself. However, he had nothing to say about the Yuntian Tower. How could he have anything to do with the people of the Black Demon Cave? Not to mention, Rong Xiu was saying that Elder Tong Chuan was one of the 8 hall masters of the Black Demon Cave? This sounded even more ridiculous. Rong Xiu glanced at him and nodded with a smile. Okay. Elder Tong Chuan was stunned for a moment before he realized what Rong Xiu meant. It seemed that he really had evidence. Then, he saw Rong Xiu raise his chin at Xue Xue and say very gently, the Black Demon Cave seal of the Black Demon Cave is very precious. The Black Demon Cave's Hall Master's sea buckthorn wooden tablet is extremely precious. I'm sure it'll be extremely effective if I use it to grind my teeth. Roar. Xue Xue let out a low roar, then pounced forward and held the wooden token in its mouth. Its sharp white teeth bit down on the black wooden token, flashing with a cold light. Elder Tong Chuan's heart skipped a beat, then he forced himself to calm down. It was just a divine beast. If it wanted to destroy this wooden token, it was still, crack. Xue Xue bit down hard, and a crack instantly appeared on the wooden token. Elder Tong Chuan widened his eyes in shock. How is this possible? When did that beast have such combat strength? Before he could figure it out, a second crisp sound was heard. Crack. The sound of the wooden token cracking sounded like a death sentence in Elder Tong Chuan's ears. He didn't think and immediately moved to snatch the token back from Xue Xue's mouth. Whoosh! The moment he moved, his eyes flashed, and Rong Xiu appeared in front of him, silently stopping his actions. Elder Tong Chuan, what are you doing? Since that wooden token belongs to one of the 8 hall masters, as long as it's destroyed, even if the owner of the wooden token isn't here, he will suffer a severe backlash. But, why are you in such a hurry? Elder Tong Chuan's face was pale, and large amounts of sweat appeared on his forehead. He looked up and saw Rong Xiu looking at him with a faint smile. Oh no. Elder Tong Chuan's heart sank. No matter how much he said before, when he attacked, it was equivalent to admitting to all of Rong Xiu's accusations. Elder Tong Chuan gritted his teeth, and a black fog suddenly appeared in the depths of his eyes. A cold and sinister aura instantly spread out from his body. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes, and the smile on his face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, cold and biting. Qi! Suddenly, the aura around Elder Tong Chuan surged. He suddenly raised his arm. A long black saber suddenly appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he stabbed towards Rong Xiu without hesitation. The two of them were very close, and Elder Tong Chuan's attack was very sudden. The sharp blade was about to land on Rong Xiu's shoulder. Your Highness, be careful. Everyone was shocked. No one expected Elder Tong Chuan to attack without hesitation, and his attack was so ruthless. 36 Elder Ming waved his sleeves, and a ray of force flew out, heading straight for Elder Tong Chuan's back. However, at this moment, a layer of black fog suddenly appeared around Rong Xiu and Elder Tong Chuan, and it instantly condensed into a barrier, sealing them within. Clang! 36 revered Elder Ming's origin power hit the barrier and let out a muffled sound. The barrier shook, and circles of ripples appeared, but it did not shatter. 36 Elder Ming and the rest's expressions changed. His strength was slightly stronger than Elder Tong Chuan, but from the situation of this barrier, Elder Tong Chuan seemed to be able to stand up to him as an equal. At this moment, Elder Tong Chuan had arrived, and he had already slashed down. Everyone subconsciously held their breaths. However, Rong Xiu's footsteps shifted slightly, and he narrowly avoided this attack. The space beside him was actually torn open by that black saber. A cluster of golden flames suddenly appeared in Rong Xiu's palm. After missing his attack, Elder Tong Chuan did not continue fighting. He actually turned around and slashed towards Xue Xue. The most important thing now was to retrieve that wooden tablet. Xue Xue leaped and quickly dodged. Elder Tong Chuan was shocked, and he was in disbelief. This divine beast's speed had clearly far exceeded its normal standard. Xue Xue bit that wooden tablet, and for the first time, it was glad that it was sent to Red Moon Desert by its master. It turned around and jumped out of the window. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1605. Respected Elder Tong Chuan immediately chased after him. But before he could move, a golden light flashed in front of him. In the next moment, a golden flame formed a barrier in front of him. Scram! Respected Elder Tong Chuan's old voice exploded with a hoarse roar. At this moment, his eyes were completely covered by the black fog. Cold, mournful, cold, it made people shudder when they looked at it. He raised his hand and slashed down fiercely. Right now, he could not care about anything else. The most important thing was to get that black wooden tablet back. With one slash, that golden flame was split apart from the middle. Just as respected Elder Tong Chuan was about to pass through it, he saw that the flame actually split into 2 ropes and surrounded him from both sides. He subconsciously dodged and crazily waved the black blade in his hand, wanting to block it outside. Because he was too clear about how terrifying Rong Xiu's flame was. Once entangled, poof! A golden spark suddenly exploded beside his ear. Respected Elder Tong Chuan turned his head stiffly and discovered that there was already a small ball of golden flame behind him. At this moment, the golden flame blossomed and transformed into countless resplendent rays of light that floated in the air. Respected Elder Tong Chuan was shocked. He subconsciously raised his head to take a look. Outside the window, Xue Xue's figure had already disappeared. But within his body, there was an intense pain. The wooden tablet was beginning to be destroyed. You! Respected Elder Tong Chuan became more and more alarmed. Wang! A strange sound suddenly entered his ears. Respected Elder Tong Chuan regained his senses and instantly opened his eyes wide in shock. Unknowingly, those stars were dancing in all directions, drawing out streaks of flowing light. They intertwined with each other and actually formed an incomparably complicated profound formation. This Xian formation was not big, but it firmly bound him within it. His heart was uneasy and he wanted to break free. But at this moment, he suddenly realized that he could not use the force in his body. I have been researching this God's Sealing formation for a long time, and only today did I have the chance to test it out. It looks pretty good, Rong Xiu said unhurriedly. There was even a slight smile on his face, as if he was quite satisfied with the effects of this profound formation. Elder Tong Chuan, however, was greatly shocked. How could this be? Rong Xiu was only a high deity. Even if he had 2 divine physiques and 2 divine realms, he was still only a high deity. But he was a venerable god. How did Rong Xiu's Xian formation achieve such power? One had to know that even though above the high god level was the god level, the gap between the two was like a chasm. In the divine ruins world, there were countless high gods. However, a high god expert was extremely precious. They all knew that Rong Xiu's combat strength was higher than other cultivators of the same level. But they hadn't expected that he would actually be able to go against an expert of the revered god realm. Not to mention Elder Tong Chuan, even the spectators were all stunned. There was no other reason why Elder Tong Chuan had such a high position in the Yintian Tower in the past. It was because he was strong enough. But now, he was actually at a disadvantage when fighting with the Holy Sun, Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu didn't give Elder Tong Chuan much time to react. He raised his hands slowly. His long and slender fingers gently clenched. Buzz! The God Sealing formation shone brightly. In an instant, Elder Tong Chuan felt as if his entire body was being ruthlessly crushed by something. Intense pain came from every part of his body. It was almost maddening. Elder Tong Chuan finally couldn't hold it in and let out a shrill cry of pain. Surrounded by the light, no one could see his appearance clearly. They could only roughly see the outline of his body and the blood that was constantly dripping from the ground. The strange thing was that the color of the blood was actually black and red, and it carried a strong stench. On the ground, the exquisite jade tiles seemed to be corroded by the blood. They emitted a sizzling sound, and black fog was emitted. This sound, this scene, made everyone's hair stand on end. If they still couldn't see that Elder Tong Chuan was from the Black Demon Cave, then they didn't need to stay in the Divine Ruins world. Elder Tong Chuan's voice gradually became softer. He also seemed to have stopped struggling. Only the blood on the ground was increasing. At a certain moment, the layer of black fog that Elder Tong Chuan had set up suddenly shattered. Bang! The black fog quickly dispersed and gathered into Elder Tong Chuan's body. But this bit of power was already a drop in the bucket for the current him. The light on the God Sealing formation gradually dissipated. Elder Tong Chuan's figure reappeared in everyone's line of sight. Someone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, then immediately fell silent. The room was deathly silent. But in every pair of eyes, there was still shock and horror that hadn't faded. At this moment, the person who had reappeared in front of them could no longer be considered a person. Elder Tong Chuan's entire body seemed to have been sucked dry by something, becoming shriveled and withered. His cheeks were deeply sunken and there wasn't the slightest trace of blood on his face. Only a pair of already black eyes were staring, filled with panic, mournful, and resentment. Looking at it made one's heart uneasy. And in between his eyebrows, a totem had unknowingly appeared. That wasn't the totem of the Yuntian Tower, but the Black Demon Cave. Suddenly, Elder Tong Chuan opened his mouth. A hoarse, low, and sinister laugh that was completely different came from afar. Rong Xiu, I've really underestimated you. Digression, insomnia yesterday, not in the right state in the morning. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read, a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1606. As soon as he said that, Tong Chuan's body suddenly started burning. Thick black mist was emitted from within, bringing with it a nauseating stench of rotting corpses. Everyone's expression changed slightly. 36 Respected Elder Ming frowned. Your Highness, be careful. Bang! An explosion suddenly sounded. Respected Elder Tong Chuan's body exploded just like that. Rong Xiu's expression turned serious, and the god's ceiling formation immediately started spinning. The splattered flesh and black mist were all swallowed by a powerful force, and finally disappeared in that light. About half an hour later, the light dissipated, and only a dried dark red bloodstain was left on the ground. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. Roar! Following this roar, Xue Xue's figure appeared outside the window once again. It flew in front of Rong Xiu and spat out the wooden tablet in its mouth. That black wooden tablet had already shattered into several pieces. Rong Xiu's expression was indifferent as he raised his finger slightly. A golden flame flew out and landed on that wooden tablet, burning quietly. In just a moment, that wooden tablet had completely turned into ashes. So many things had happened in such a short period of time that everyone present was so shocked that they didn't know what to say. Everyone looked at the ashes and the remaining bloodstains and couldn't recover for a long time. 36 Respected Elder Ming finally couldn't help but say. I didn't expect Tong Chuan to be the Hall Master of Black Demon Cave. He isn't the real Tong Chuan. Rong Xiu suddenly said. 36 Respected Elder Ming was shocked. Your Highness, you mean? Rong Xiu's words were concise and comprehensive. Possession. Everyone fell into silence. After a long while, 36 Respected Elder Ming sighed in realization. I see, if that was the case, it wasn't difficult to explain why Tong Chuan had been staying in the Yuntian Tower all these years without being discovered. It turned out that he had been replaced midway. Then the real Tong Chuan, 36 Revered Elder Ming was halfway through his words when his voice stopped abruptly. Actually, there was no need to ask this question anymore. Since he had been possessed, the real Elder Tong Chuan was naturally no longer in this world. Rong Xiu pondered for a moment. It should be a few years ago. When I just left the Yuntian Tower, there was already a change of people. In fact, he had already had suspicions since then, but because he had other things to do at that time, he did not personally investigate. From then on, Elder Tong Chuan didn't reveal any abnormalities, nor did he leave behind any evidence. If he wanted to investigate further, it would be even more difficult. Until the incident on Bailey June, but hasn't the Black Demon Cave gone into seclusion in recent years? Why would they go through so much trouble to send a Hall Master to sneak into our Yuntian Tower? The other supremacy was confused as he silently glanced at Rong Xiu. Furthermore, the other party's target seemed to be the successor. Even this time, the target of the attack on clan leader Bailey June seemed to be Rong Xiu. Only by living in seclusion can one have the time and energy to do other things. Rong Xiu said indifferently. Actually, the voice just now didn't belong to the possessed Hall Master, but, in order to deal with him, the other party had used all kinds of methods, even sacrificing a Hall Master. 36 Great Lord Ming asked in a deep voice. Your Highness, what should we do after this? Do you have any plans? The other party had bullied them. This matter couldn't be let go just like that. Moreover, Elder Tong Chuan had always held an important position in the Yuntian Tower. Who knew how many secrets he had stolen? If one were to calculate this debt, it would be even more shocking. Their target is I. Rong Xiu seemed to have guessed what he was thinking and said indifferently, Rest assured, Elder Tong Chuan. Although Elder Tong Chuan has been in power for the past few years, but what he knows is what I let him know. I just didn't expect him to wait until today to make his move. However, UMO and the others should have cleaned up most of the mess outside by now. This meant that when he was dealing with revered Elder Tong Chuan, the people outside had already surrounded and suppressed his subordinates. Everyone had a complicated expression when they heard this. Shock, surprise, lamentation. At this moment, they finally understood that Rong Xiu didn't call them over to investigate the reason why Bailey Jun was unconscious. He had made up his mind to attack Elder Tong Chuan today. It was just catching a turtle in a jar. 36 Great Lord Ming heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. That's good, that's good. Your Highness has always been good at strategizing. This old man is really ashamed. Rong Xiu smiled. Previously, for the sake of convenience, there were some things that I didn't tell you. I hope you can forgive me. At this point, what else did 36 Great Lord Ming not understand? Rong Xiu seemed to have left the Yuntian Tower for the past few years and didn't put much effort into the matters here. Instead, he handed everything over to 36 Great Lord Ming. But in reality, he had already secretly laid down another huge net. 36 Great Lord Ming wasn't angry. On the contrary, he was very gratified and happy. He had watched Rong Xiu grow up. He knew how outstanding Rong Xiu was. Along the way, he had also seen Rong Xiu's growth. But it was only today that he could finally be at ease. Rong Xiu's thoughts and methods were definitely enough to support him to secure his position as the son of Saint. Killing Tong Chuan today was to eradicate the scourge. At the same time, it was to kill the chicken to warn the monkeys, to warn those who didn't know their place. Even someone like Elder Tong Chuan didn't have a good ending in Rong Xiu's hands, let alone them. 36 Great Lord Ming looked around and nodded in satisfaction when he saw their expressions. From today onwards, all the troubles in the Yuntian Tower should be resolved. One of them had an especially interesting expression. 36 Great Lord Ming raised his eyebrows. Great Lord Yujing, you have always been close to Elder Tong Chuan. These matters, I don't know. Without waiting for him to finish, Great Lord Yujing hurriedly denied it. He looked nervously at Rong Xiu with a pale face. Your Highness is wise. I really don't know anything about these matters. Although I have a good relationship with him, it's only because his status is higher that I have no choice but to obey. But actually, I didn't participate in these matters. This is absolutely true. Because of his anxiety and worry, his voice sounded a little shrill. By the time he finished speaking, his head was already covered in cold sweat. Great Lord Yujing wasn't stupid. Elder Tong Chuan was from the Black Demon Cave and had even attacked the son of Saint. If he had anything to do with him now, he would probably be consigned to eternal damnation. He had to get himself out of this. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes and glanced at Xue Xue. Go clean up the Spring of Harmony. It's too dirty. The Spring of Harmony was a hot spring on Duming Peak. Usually, very few people were qualified to go there. Most importantly, the spring water of the Spring of Harmony had the effect of healing injuries. Xue Xue's injuries weren't light this time. Hearing this, Xue Xue responded happily and hurriedly turned to leave. Rong Xiu then raised his eyes and looked at Great Lord Yujing. He raised his eyebrows slightly with a faint smile. You really don't know anything? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1607. Elder Yujingzuan choked, and hesitation flashed in his eyes. But it was only for a moment, and his expression quickly returned to normal, and he vowed firmly, "I really don't know." Rong Xiu's smile deepened, but it carried a bit of cold sarcasm. "After the patriarch fainted, you were the first to find out, and then you called Elder Tong Chuan over. Now, the reason why the patriarch fainted is clear: it was Elder Tong Chuan who sealed him. Don't you think there's something wrong with the timing?" Elder Yujingzuan was at a loss for words, and after hesitating for a moment, he explained this, he must have attacked the patriarch first. Then he pretended that nothing happened, and pushed all the blame away. It must be like this. There's one thing you might not know. After the seal was placed, the patriarch's body could no longer accept the force from the outside world. Naturally, this includes the force in the human body. Elder Yujingzuan suddenly realized something, and the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. He looked up at Rong Xiu in shock, but only saw the man's eyes that seemed to have seen through everything. Your Highness," his lips squirmed, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't make a sound. Rong Xiu's words were very clear. Everyone's eyes fell on him, but at this moment, he felt as if there was a knife on his back. His mind was blank, and only a voice echoed in his mind. "It's over, it's really over, plop." Elder Yujingzuan suddenly knelt down, and his knees heavily smashed on the jade bricks, producing a dull sound that made one's teeth ache. He pressed his head against the ground and begged, "Your Highness. I admit, I followed Elder Tong Chuan's orders and went in first to attack the patriarch, but I really don't know." Bailey Jun's strength had increased greatly after coming out of seclusion. Although he had suffered a blow because of Jiang Jiwan's matter, his combat strength was still not to be underestimated. At that time, the two of them went in together, and he made the first move, followed by Elder Tong Chuan. Elder Tong Chuan had only said that he wanted to push all the blame onto Rong Xiu and pull him down from the position of Holy Son. Honorable Elder Yujing originally didn't want to do this, but after thinking about it and under Honorable Elder Tong Chuan's persuasion, he finally agreed. But he only thought that Senior Tong Chuan was after the position of Patriarch and Holy Son. Who would have thought that he was actually someone from the Black Demon Cave? In the end, he was also wronged. However, Rong Xiu had already turned his gaze slightly and looked toward 36 respected Elder Ming. "I still need to see the Patriarch. I'll leave these matters to you." 36 respected Elder Ming nodded. "Rest assured, Your Highness." After Rong Xiu finished speaking, he lifted his foot and walked outside. Honored Elder Yujing still wanted to beg, but he was intimidated by 36 Honored Elder Ming's gaze, and his entire body trembled. He shut his mouth. The room was silent. Everyone's eyes were still unconsciously following Rong Xiu. When he reached the door, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, half turned around, raised his eyebrows, and chuckled. "From today onwards, you don't have to worry about the Patriarch." Many people's faces alternated between red and white. In the end, they responded in unison and bowed respectfully. Yes. After Rong Xiu left, the room was still silent for a long time. Today's battle was really too thrilling. Thinking about it carefully, many people secretly felt miserable. With Rong Xiu's thoughts and methods, if he wanted to deal with them, it was really too easy. To think that they were actually naive enough to think that they could fight against him, it seemed that the best choice in the future was to obediently listen to all his orders. 36 respected Elder Ming looked around and laughed. "Everyone, it's time for us to settle the score today, right?" When Rong Xiu walked out of the main hall, Yan Qing, who was waiting outside, hurriedly came forward to welcome him. "Your Highness. UMO sent news that the matter is almost settled." Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. "He's really fast. Your Highness has already arranged everything before, so it's natural that you're quick to pull in the net." Rong Xiu glanced at him and smiled. "Your acting skills have also improved." A rare look of embarrassment appeared on Yan Qing's iceberg-like face. "Your Highness, you flatter me. These are all what I should do." Rong Xiu kindly let him off and did not continue to tease him. He moved his feet and headed in the direction of Duming Peak. Is the patriarch awake? Not yet, Your Highness. Rong Xiu's expression was indifferent. It's indeed a little troublesome to deal with that seal. Although he himself had escaped a calamity back then, it did not mean that he could easily break it. This seal was considered one of the top secret techniques of the Black Demon Cave, and there were very few people who knew about it. If he wanted to completely solve it, he was afraid that it would take some effort. Your Highness, about the princess consort, Enchanting spoke hesitantly. Since the trouble here has been solved, you should be able to ask the princess consort to come back, right? Rong Xiu's thin crimson lips curled up slightly, and his eyes softened. When this matter is over, I will personally go to the Phoenix God Mountain to pick her up. Previously, he pretended to rush back to the Yuntian Tower and did not tell her the truth. In fact, he wanted to take care of these things before bringing her back. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix was enough for her to worry about. Enchanting was taken aback, but immediately returned to normal and responded respectfully. As they spoke, the two had already reached the top of Duming Peak. Rong Xiu flew down and landed on a black jade stone. The soldiers in charge of guarding around saluted in unison. Greetings, Your Highness. He did not know if it was an illusion, but the iron-blooded aura on their bodies today seemed to be stronger than before. Rong Xiu gently nodded and walked toward the sacrificial god temple. Enchanting followed closely behind. Wherever he passed, all the soldiers knelt on one knee to welcome him. They all knew that the Yuntian Tower, which looked calm on the surface, had set off a bloody storm again. Rong Xiu walked to the door of the sacrificial god temple and suddenly stopped. By the way, how are the preparations for the wedding going? Enchanting immediately replied respectfully. Your Highness, it is basically ready. The preparations began a few years ago, and a lot of manpower and material resources of the Yuntian Tower were used. How could it not be ready? Rong Xiu nodded, and there seemed to be a stream of light flashing through his phoenix eyes. When I bring her back, we can choose a good day for the wedding. Digression, today's February was sealed by the cold, so it was even more early. I will make it up tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1608. As the sun rose, the dark sky gradually brightened. The last light in the Phoenix Shrine quietly went out. A gentle breeze blew, and the white mist slowly dissipated, revealing the figures of the people sitting quietly in the plaza. Chu Luiyue exhaled slowly and opened her eyes. The energy of heaven and earth here was abundant and pure. Cultivating here was almost twice as effective as cultivating outside. Therefore, when she was waiting for Tuanzi outside the door, she didn't waste any time and divided part of her mind to cultivate. After breaking through to High God, her efficiency in absorbing origin power had increased significantly. Naturally, her cultivation speed had increased as well. There were a total of 3 stages in High God: early stage, middle stage, and peak stage. The difference between these 3 stages was not small. Currently, she was only at the early stage. If she wanted to continue breaking through, she would have to work hard. After the refinement of the pure origin power, her spirit had recovered significantly. Her pair of jade-like eyes were sparkling. She glanced at the entrance of the Phoenix Shrine. Dumpling had already been in there for 3 days, but there were still no signs of her coming out. Yi Zhao was accompanying her inside, so of course, he had not come out. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, but still looked to the side. Elder Yi Yu had left yesterday. It seemed that his subordinates had discovered that Fenghuang Valley was severely damaged and had asked him to return to take a look. It made sense. In the past month, she could not remember how many Tianlei she had triggered. Although these Tianlei had been absorbed by Dumpling, the energy fluctuations in the process had still affected Fenghuang Valley. Chu Luiyue felt a rare sense of guilt. She wanted to go with him. However, Elder Yu waved his hand and told her to continue waiting for Dumpling. As for the rest, she could leave it to them. This was their territory anyway. When it came to repairing it, Chu Liyue did not know as much as they did. In the face of Chu Liyue's apology, Elder Yu's attitude became even more carefree. You've already helped Dumpling open her fourth meridian, what's this small matter? Dumpling's significance to the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was immeasurable. Even if Fenghuang Valley was destroyed, they would have nothing to say. Fenghuang Valley could be rebuilt, but there might not be a second Dumpling. Since the other party said so, Chu Liyue did not insist. After the first day, Elder Gong never appeared again. Thus, at this moment, there were 3 other elders waiting outside the palace. Chu Liyue looked at Elder Shang, who was the closest to him. Elder Shang, pardon me for asking, but does the ancestral worship always take so long? Elder Shang looked back and smiled gently. Under normal circumstances, the young lord only needs 1 day to worship the ancestors. But Dumpling is a little special. It's normal for her to take a little longer. Chu Liyue pursed her lips. Of course, she was clear on this point. But it had already been 3 days, and there was no movement at all. This made her feel nervous. Then, do you know how long it will take? Elder Shang shook his head. This depends on her. Although there had been pure-blooded members of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan in the past, no one had ever summoned the ancestral spirit. This was Dumpling's first time. They did not have much experience, so they did not say much. Chu Liyue nodded in understanding, and could only continue waiting patiently. Luckily, she and Dumpling could sense each other. She felt that there should be no problem. Suddenly, Chu Liyue felt a slight fluctuation in her energy center. Her expression froze. Moments later, the fluctuation came again, and this time, it was clearly bigger than the first time. It came from that water droplet. In the unseen world, there seemed to be something vaguely summoning. Chu Liyue raised her eyes and looked in the direction of the summoning. She immediately held her breath. This power seemed to be coming from the Phoenix Shrine. She looked around her. Everyone's expression was normal, and there seemed to be no difference. This power seemed to be summoning only her. This, Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched. She could feel that this summoning power was extremely vast and powerful, with an astonishing pressure that could not be defied. Even Yi Zhao from before couldn't be compared to him. It was just that this power was very gentle to her, so although it fell on her body, it did not make her feel uncomfortable. In an instant, a ridiculous and bold guess flashed through Chu Liyue's mind. Who else could possess such summoning power other than the ancestors of the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix clan who had been worshipped by the Phoenix Divine Hall for generations? But she was the only human here, and the only connection between her and the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix was Dumpling. How could, suddenly, Chu Liyue's thoughts came to a decision. Could it be because of Dumpling? Gradually, the fluctuation became stronger and stronger, and Chu Liyue could no longer ignore it. Finally, before Chu Liyue took the initiative to speak, the door of the Phoenix Shrine suddenly opened. Creak, this long and vicissitude sound was particularly clear in the quiet square. Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction of the door. The expressions of Yi Shang and the others turned solemn. It seemed that the clan leader and Dumpling were about to come out. Yi Zhao's figure quickly appeared behind the door. He lifted his foot and stepped out of the door. Everyone bowed respectfully. Greetings, clan leader. Many people breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the ancestral worship inside was finally over. However, there were some more observant people who quickly realized that Dumpling did not follow them out. Logically speaking, the 2 of them should have come out together. Yi Zhao's gaze fell directly on Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue seemed to have sensed something and looked up. The 2 of them looked at each other. Chu Liyue could clearly see the complicated emotions surging in Yi Zhao's eyes. Then, he heard Yi Zhao say, "Shengguan Yu, you go in." These few simple words stunned everyone on the spot. Some even rubbed their ears, thinking that they were hallucinating. Some looked at each other, and from the shock in each other's eyes, they confirmed the clan leader's words. Yi Shang and the others were also stunned. Although Shang Guanyu had entered the Phoenix Shrine twice before, it was under special circumstances. But it was different now. Dumpling was inside worshipping her ancestors. Why was Shang Guanyu suddenly asked to go in at this time? However, when they saw Yi Zhao's serious expression, they did not dare to ask too much. They subconsciously looked at Chu Luyue. As expected, Chu Luyue calmed down, nodded slightly, and walked directly to the main hall. Everyone's eyes unconsciously followed her movements. When she brushed past Yi Zhao, Chu Luyue could clearly feel that Yi Zhao was sizing her up. The look in his eyes was different from his usual expression. Although he looked calm on the surface, it was obvious that the waves in his heart had not calmed down. Chu Luyue paused for a moment, then continued to walk into the Phoenix Shrine without looking sideways. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1609. The door slowly closed, completely blocking Chu Luyue's figure and blocking everyone's sight, including Yi Zhao. After being stunned for a while, Yi Shang couldn't help but ask. "Clan leader, you aren't going in with us?" Yi Zhao nodded expressionlessly. This reaction was really hard to fathom. Elder Yi Shang frowned. This was obviously not the clan leader's intention. No matter how much he doted on Dumpling, he wouldn't summon Shang Guanyu into the Phoenix Temple at this time. Unless this was the ancestors' intention. Other than that, no one else in the entire clan could be above the clan leader. This, Elder Yi Shang was speechless and didn't know how to react. The ancestor of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had fallen tens of thousands of years ago during the sacrifice to the heavens. Only a remnant of his consciousness remained in the Phoenix Temple. In the long years, this consciousness had basically been in a deep sleep. This consciousness would only awaken when every generation of patriarch worshipped their ancestors. However, it would often continue to fall into a deep sleep after the sacrifice. But now, this consciousness actually woke up when Dumpling worshipped the ancestors, and it even allowed Shang Guanyu to enter. How could this not be shocking? Elder Yi Jiao asked worriedly. Then, "Clan leader, is Dumpling doing well? Could something have happened to her?" Yi Zhao nodded. "Everything is normal inside, don't worry." Since the ancestors' consciousness had awakened, there was naturally a reason. At first, when he realized the ancestors' intention, he was also shocked, but now he had chosen to accept it. Perhaps it was because of the contract between her and Dumpling. Yi Zhao didn't say anything else. He just stood outside the door with his hands behind his back and waited quietly. No one dared to ask anymore and could only continue to wait. Countless people had the same question in their minds. Shang Guanyu, a human, entered the Phoenix Temple during the sacrifice to the ancestors. How should this be counted? Hearing the sound of the door closing, Chu Luyue turned around to take a look. Yi Zhao didn't follow in, but the summoning wave in her dantian was getting stronger. This wave drove her forward. Although she had been here twice before, she had been in a hurry. She hadn't had the chance to properly size up the most sacred place of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. On the black jade slab, her figure was clearly reflected, as well as the specks of starlight above the dome. Although the sky was already bright, it still couldn't hide the bright light. Walking here would often give people the illusion that they were taking a stroll in the night sky full of stars. Chu Luyue walked through the hall and crossed the threshold. She could clearly feel that the ripples in her body had become stronger. The summoning force seemed to be not far as She calmed herself down and continued to walk inside. This place was clearly not a place where ordinary people could enter. Chu Luyue thought as he walked. Among the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix clan, those who could enter here could probably be counted on one's fingers. And she actually came in at this time. The deeper he went, the more intense the fluctuations in Chu Liuyue's dantian became, and his heart beat faster and faster. But the miraculous thing was that in such an unknown situation, she didn't have the slightest bit of worry in her heart. She didn't know if it was because the power that summoned her was too gentle, or because she knew that Dumpling was also here, so she felt at ease. After walking for another quarter of an hour, Chu Liyue came to another door. She stood in front of the door and stared at it. A clear thought flashed through her mind. This was the place. She took a deep breath and raised her arm. Just as she was about to push the door opened by itself. Chu Liyue pressed her lips against each other as she stepped in. There was a universe within the great hall. Chu Liyue walked in and saw Dumpling standing in the middle of the great hall. Hearing the sound, Dumpling turned around. Seeing that it was Chu Liyue, she immediately ran over happily, opened her two chubby arms, and threw herself into her arms. "Ah, you." Hearing her clear and happy voice, Chu Liyue was immediately relieved. She smiled and bent down, picking her up. A ball of softness. "Ah, you're finally here." Dumpling wrapped her arms around her neck and rubbed her cheeks happily. Chu Liyue's brows moved slightly. "You knew I was coming?" "Yes. Ancestor said that he wanted to see you, so I waited for you." Only then did Chu Liyue raise her eyes. The great hall was somewhat empty, and there was no sound at all. It was very quiet. The ground was still paved with black jade, but above the dome, there were no longer specks of light. Instead, there were balls of crimson gold flames. In the deepest part, on the wall in front of her, there was a huge painting. In the thick flames, a crimson gold sky phoenix spread its wings and soared into the sky with a shocking aura. This painting was very realistic. The feathers on the crimson gold sky phoenix were almost completely visible, as if it would rush out of the painting in the next moment. Only the place where the eyes should be was empty, as if something was missing. However, Chu Liyue only took a glance, and she felt the force in her body faintly boil. The water droplet in her dantian also started to slowly rotate unconsciously. Chu Liyue was secretly shocked. This must be the ancestor of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. She was about to control the water droplet to stop moving when she suddenly heard an old and distant voice. "You are Dumpling's contracted master?" That voice came from the mural, as if it had flowed through thousands of years of wind and frost. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. She put Dumpling down, cupped her fists, and bowed respectfully. "Junior Shangguan, you greet senior. No need to be so polite." That voice seemed to have a hint of a gentle smile. "Dumpling has already told me everything between the two of you. You are indeed very good to her." Chu Liyue heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. From this tone, the other party seemed to like Dumpling very much, and even his attitude towards her was much better. "I let you in today because I want to see what kind of person can make Dumpling so dependent and close to him, and even be willing to give up the position of clan leader." Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat, and she asked warily, "Senior also wants me to break the contract with Dumpling?" "Of course not." The other party smiled. "You don't have to be nervous. Since I gave the Taoist soul to Tuanzi before, I won't care about this. No matter what, the position of clan leader will be hers in the future." Only then did Chu Liyue feel relieved. She said with some embarrassment, "This junior misunderstood. Please don't take it to heart. Yi Zhao and the others were quite rude to you before, so it's normal for you to be like this. But if there's anything rude, I hope you can let it go." Hearing this, Chu Liyue suddenly had a very subtle feeling in her heart. This ancestor of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan seems to be a little too polite to her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1610. As an ancient divine beast, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had always been very arrogant. This was especially so in front of humans. And this was the ancestor of the crimson gold sky phoenix. Speaking of which, it was not an exaggeration to say that she had the status of a supreme being. Although this was only a remnant consciousness, the other party's identity was still full of deterrence. Even if she had a contract with Dumpling, the other party didn't seem to have to give her face like this, right? Countless thoughts flashed through Chu Liuyue's mind, but her expression was normal as she said with a smile, "You're too polite. Dumpling has been with me for many years, and we've gone through life and death together countless times. We're already as close as family. I know that what clan leader Yi Zhao and the others did was for the good of Dumpling. I'm more than happy and gratified." This was the truth. Chu Liyue admitted that her temper was not good. This time, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had done a lot of things. If it was in the past, she would definitely not tolerate it. However, she knew that in the end, they were also doing it for Dumpling. Considering this point, she could ignore all those things. To her, all those things were not as important as Dumpling. As soon as she finished speaking, Chu Liyue felt her legs go soft. She looked down and saw Dumpling hugging her thigh, looking at her with tears in her grape-like eyes. "Ah, you," Dumpling called her name coquettishly and intimately, full of nostalgia and dependence. She knew that "Ah, you" was the best to her. Chu Liyue smiled and touched her head. "I have a question for you." That voice sounded again. Chu Liyue nodded. "Senior, please speak." The other party paused for a moment before saying word by word, "Where did you get that thing in your body?" The hall fell into dead silence. The moment Chu Liyue heard that sentence, she understood that it was referring to the water droplet in her dantian. She paused for a moment. She knew that there was no need for her to play dumb at this time. This junior accidentally obtained it a few years ago. "Oh." The other party seemed a little surprised. "Then you didn't go and look for the rest of them in the past few years?" Chu Liyue suddenly looked up. 10,000 miles away. The islands were scattered and the mountain ranges were continuous. This was the territory of the great phoenix dragon race. The tallest mountain peak in the center was even more majestic. All of a sudden, a furious dragon roar came from a cave halfway up the mountain. Roar! His aura shook the heavens, causing many great phoenix dragons to look over in shock. What's going on? Judging from his voice, it seems to be Elder Mao Yao. Ah, looks like Elder Mao Yao has almost fully recovered. There was a hint of mockery in the voice. It must have been tough for you to recuperate for so long. Shoo! Lower your voice. If someone hears it and reports it to Elder Mao Yao, you'll have to bear the consequences. Don't forget what happened to those who followed him to Lingshao College. Tisk, is there a need for that? I didn't say anything, did I? At most, I'm just concerned about Elder Mao Yao's health. Moreover, it is not just us. There are quite a number of elders in the clan who are criticizing Elder Mao Yao. This was a tactful way of saying it. Ever since Mao Yao had brought people to the Spiritual Firmament Academy with the intention of finding trouble with Shengguan Yu and Shengguan Jing, the Great Void Phoenix Dragon Tribe's attitude towards Mao Yao had changed greatly after that. He was a dignified elder with a noble status and extraordinary strength. Originally, he went to settle the score with them and brought back the corpse. But in the end, not only did he come back with injuries all over his body, but he even allowed them to take the corpse as their own. The entire Great Void Phoenix Dragon Tribe had been utterly humiliated. How could they not have any resentment in their hearts? However, due to Mao Yao's status as an elder and the fact that he was injured when he came back, the patriarch did not punish him. But in private, everyone in the race was already very dissatisfied with Mao Yao. Even when they heard his voice, they felt extremely annoyed. Let's talk less. Even if we really want to punish him, it's the patriarch and the other elders' business. It's not up to us to speak. I'd like to see how Elder Mao Yao plans to make up for this matter. That's enough. It's useless to be angry now. You've just recovered, so don't be so irritable. In the cave, a tall and burly figure stood with his hands behind his back. He looked to be about 50 years old. His appearance was ordinary, but he was hale and hearty. His hair was purple and gold, and his deep eyes seemed to be all-encompassing. They were as deep as a cold lake that could not be explored. This person was the patriarch of the great phoenix dragon race, Mao Yang. In front of him was a huge great phoenix dragon. It was obvious that it had been injured. Although its wounds had mostly healed, the newly grown scales were still particularly eye-catching. Mao Yang's eyes were filled with resentment. These were all the scales that he had plucked out from his damaged scales and regrown them. No one else could understand the pain he had gone through. Does that mean that Shang Wanyu survived that disaster unscathed? Mao Yang said. Not exactly unscathed. I heard that she was bedridden for almost a month. Then she's still alive. Mao Yang said angrily. She's really lucky. Something so big had happened in the Spiritual Firmament Academy, and Shang Wanyu had put herself in danger, but she had managed to survive. Mao Yang narrowed his eyes. He did not agree with Mao Yang's words. I think that Shang Wanyu relied on more than just luck. After all, she personally repaired Lingxiao College's Sky Shuttle array. How could an ordinary person do that? Either she has a trump card, or someone helped her. But no matter what, it proves that she's not simple. In that case, it was reasonable for her to be able to win against Mao Yao in that bet. You were too careless previously. Mao Yang said bluntly. Mao Yao was speechless. In fact, he had already realized this point, but he was unwilling to admit it. So what if he admitted it? The result was already decided. Paw! He swung his long tail, and the hard dragon scales scraped against the mountain wall. Next time, I won't let her have it easy. Mao Yang suddenly said. Do you still remember that about a month ago, Yi Zhao personally wrote a letter to Lingxiao College's dean, Nan Suhuai, asking Shang Wanyu to go to Phoenix Mountain? Of course. Mao Yao gritted his teeth. He had deliberately spread the news that Shang Wanyu had formed a contract with the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. In the end, Yi Zhao and the others acted quickly. Why? Is there a result now? Mao Yang paused. Not really. It's just that Shang Wanyu hasn't come out of Phoenix Mountain yet. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's ancestral worship ceremony will be held during this period. Digression, I'm going out for a while. I'll continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.